Mace.
No, it's Nancy May.
Still have that fly.
I want to kill this
It's
fly.
a moth.
Can you guys see it?
Yes, we can.
It's everywhere in the shot.
It looks like a moth.
All right.
It ate off David's hair.
Oh, got it.
Damn,
Got
bald
it.
jokes from the
From the bald man.
from the crowd.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Human Reaction, your weekly source for independent commentary on cultural news and politics, where it's always our mission to arm you with the tools you need to cut through media misdirection and resist the mononarrative. Today's a very special day. We have some special guests, an in-studio audience. My parents, Lauren and Steve, and my Aunt Melaine sitting behind the curtain. They might chime in with some questions. Say hello, everybody.
Hey.
Hello.
Glad to have you here. This is our first time doing a live studio audience, so it should be fun.
It's a good beta test. I like it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. David, what are we talking about today?
So today we're talking about Biden drops down an electoral flight of stairs this time.
Oh.
Kamala gets Biden's endorsement as the first Indian black woman handy-capable president.
Wow.
Yep. A new cycle of Trump shooter details have come out of the closet like a blue-haired activist. And the world's richest man can't get a single media cycle that isn't rife with fake news. And it even caught us. Even us. Yeah.
Yep.
And then behind this GIF, we're going to be talking about BB goes to Congress and Elon talks about fundamental axioms with Jordan B. Peterson.
I'm sure Dr. A will love that one in the Discord channel.
And speaking of Dr. A in the Discord channel, I actually pulled the meme from him this week.
There we go.
And it's about the Trump assassination attempt. As Secret Service, we surveil all that the light touches. What about that building over there? That's too slopey. We must never go there.
Fact.
And yeah, make sure to like, follow, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave the review on wherever you're watching us right now. Thank you to all of our members. You can find out how to support us at humanreactionpod.com. And you can also check out all of our merchandise and everything. We got t-shirts. We got new stickers that Joe just
We got
brought
stickers.
in,
They're right here. I'll show them
all
off.
this stuff.
Oh, yeah, we got this. We got this. You can buy a multi-pack for just a few dollars. For the cost of a cup of coffee, you can support this show and get David some Bosley hair restoration.
So the bald jokes today.
Oh my God, ew, David.
Yes.
And join our
Kaylee.
Discord.
Here you
And
go.
join our Discord.
Here you go, Kaylee. Got you a special sticker.
I did that for you, Kaylee. I found that at one of those kitschy little stores in the market. Hot off the press. If you are a small business owner looking for exponential growth, you have to connect with Adam Thune at Intellectual Patriots. He will revolutionize your business game and help you get to the next level. Adam can streamline your business practices and advertising strategies to improve your bottom line. His expertise in data engineering means he can build you the systems you need to collect and analyze market data. His mission is to provide you with invaluable insights to fuel your success. From grant writing and business proposals to digital systems integrations, even AI management. Intellectual Patriots is a one-stop shop for cutting-edge solutions. Don't wait another second. Visit intelpatriots.com to learn more. That's INTEL patriots.com. This episode is brought to you by Revved Up Promo, the official apparel partner of Human Reaction. Revved Up is a premier full-service shop specializing in laser engraving, screen printing, and embroidery. Not only are they now making all of our apparel right down the road from us, they can do the same for your brand and ship it to you anywhere in the world. Revved Up helps you navigate the extensive universe of merch options and uses state-of-the-art techniques to showcase your brand in its very best light. So if you want to support our show and our generous sponsor, you can now do so by buying our merch and by turning to Revved Up Promo for your own custom apparel needs. Reach them at revveduppromo.com. That's with 2 V's and 2 P's, or just check the show notes for a link. All right, first story. Biden drops out. It was a very interesting news cycle around this. People thought he was dead for a period of time, which I found hilarious. Lay this one out for us, David.
I like to call it Biden's mysterious 72 hours, where everyone was like, is he alive? What's going on? We have Charlie Kirk here with kind of a rumor that got started that went live on Tucker Carlson with Jack Prosovic, and a lot of it went huge on the internet. The question about whether or not what happened in Vegas, basically the rumor was, and correct me if I'm wrong here, full of other facts at the moment, was that he was in Vegas and had to be medevaced out due to a COVID infection that went really bad or something like that, and went to like John Hopkins Medical Center.
The theory was that at first they were communicating with Las Vegas PD to clear the streets so they could drive him to the University Medical Center. And then the last minute they pivoted and got him on Air Force One and got him out of there ASAP. One of the sources I think that was cited said it was the fastest that they'd ever seen Air Force One take off. Like, got him on the plane and they were gone. So who knows how true that all was? I mean, this is a source within the Las Vegas PD, or a former PD officer there who has sources within the department. But
Las Vegas Metro.
That was the theory, and this also comes on the back of the supposed medical emergency on Air Force One about a week or two ago, where the press were asked to quickly leave the plane so that they could deal with this. I've seen some reports that have been sent to me that said that was fake news. Also, that was from AP. I don't know, again, how true that was. But obviously, there's a lot of secrecy around Biden's health in general. So maybe that's part of the issue, is they're just not very forthcoming with things. So that it leaves a lot of room for conspiracy theories to crop up, right?
And it could be totally true that he was in Vegas and then had to leave this way. Like, that's not disputed, right? It's just, to what degree was this like he was unconscious or debilitated in such a way that he couldn't do the things that we were then seeing coming out of him, such as his resignation letter.
One too many pina coladas at the Bellagio. Right?
well, and that's the important thing, is before all this happened is the circumstances under him resigning from the campaign, right? Where we basically just get a letter from, like, on X. We don't get a public statement from him for many days, and it leaves us all to kind of wonder, was this a coup? Did we just watch like a bloodless coup or something like that happened right now? And that's kind of the hypothesis that was surrounding this. And then you have Charlie Kirk saying here, I've received multiple emails like this one confirming many elements of the story. Many have confirmed that a call went out to block streets to get Biden to University Medical Trauma Center ASAP, and then the plan abruptly changed and they got him out on AF1 very quickly. I have not confirmed the IDs of these people, but there are an overwhelming number of stories corroborating essentially the same account that I felt comfortable sharing. I have people diving deeper into this now. And one of the emails here is, Charlie, your info is solid. I retired from the Las Vegas Metro in blanked out. My source texted me this just now. We were making plans to go to UMC Trauma first, called in the box squads to come help shut down the route. Then it changed to taking him to the airport. He was on the plane fast and took off faster than I've ever seen AF1 leave the airport.
Very interesting. So the question was then bolstered by the letterhead, which many people claimed was suspicious for two reasons. One, his signature looks very strange in it, and I even saw that and was like, that doesn't look like a real signature.
Well, there were comparisons to like 4 other letters that he had signed, and it was vastly different. You could attribute that to a lot of things. I think, particularly if it's a digital signature, it's actually something that he signed, but digitally, because obviously this didn't come out on paper, right? It's just only on Twitter. It could have been, some handwriting error there. Maybe he was, maybe he was sick with COVID and he couldn't write clearly, or maybe it was someone faking a signature. It's a possibility.
Which wouldn't be that weird, right? So a lot of comms professionals have a signature that they use for official documentation. They get it approved by the person, then they just drop the signature in, like a DocuSign.
Which it raises the question, why wouldn't you just do that? If you had an official signature, why wouldn't you just copy paste the JPEG onto the thing and ship it out?
It is strange. So that rose questions. And then additionally, that the letterhead itself was a question that people rose. And I think that was mostly just a misunderstanding about how these kind of communications can work. FEC rules basically say that you have a clear separation between your official office and your campaign, and this would be campaign communications. That said, it also isn't really in a clear campaign communication like letterhead either. You would have like Team Biden over it and things like that.
Right.
So that was also like, it was strange, but it wasn't the kind of smoking gun that people seemed to make it.
Yeah, well that's the thing, because like people were really concerned about like, where's the presidential seal? And this is not a presidential function.
Right. Well, the question to me though is would there be legal ramifications if this weren't from the Biden campaign? If this were some sort of malfeasance, would there be something that someone would be charged with or in trouble for by putting that brand on there but not being an official communication of the campaign?
No. The campaign can decide what it wants to do with its branding.
But if you're not a part of the campaign, you're putting this out as sort of part of this soft coup, and you were to use that brand unofficially, would that be a problem for whomever it is put it out?
I would assume anything that would happen there would come from the campaign staff, right?
You would think.
Yeah,
I mean,
they
like
would
the
have
intern.
access to the Twitter account. They would have access, and there would be a communications professional for sure, like whoever their accounts person is.
Yeah. What would be the logic for putting this out on Twitter without Biden actually making an official statement? Just he's too sick to actually speak to the public in any way?
You know, I suspect.
Stupid son of a bitch.
Yeah, what's the motive for doing it now when he's super sick and all these other things? I suspect, conspiracy hat time. I suspect this was already a prearranged thing. At some point this summer, after the delegates were locked up, they were going to move over to Kamala regardless.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why do the debate when they did the debate? Like, the debate is way too early. No campaign manager ever says, oh, you know what's great? We're an incumbent and I have a disabled candidate. I'm going to put them on television in front of everybody as early as possible.
It always comes after conventions because that's when we know the nominees. And at this point, technically, the two nominees weren't locked in at all because there was no convention, which is where they get confirmed. And like, we never have a Republican versus Democrat debate before conventions. That never happens. So it is an unprecedented thing that occurred right there.
Yeah.
So my suspicion is that at some point, probably even back in 2020, there was a deal cut saying, hey, I'm going to be a one term, but we're going to make sure you're the person after she failed her first attempt at running for president by getting no delegates whatsoever, that she was going to get this opportunity for the job through the least democratic means possible, which is we're going to shut down all the primaries. We're not going to allow anyone else to really run against Joe Biden. RFK Jr. comes out and they really have to box him out of that situation because he's too popular. And then we're going to shuffle you in by a retirement, mid-campaign.
Well,
that's why they have to lie about his cognitive decline for all this time, right? Because that's a huge risk to do those lies. And they took those risks specifically so that they could get their preferred candidate with no Democratic
Yeah,
input.
because if they tried to delete him before this time period, they would have had to have an actual primary in some regard. Because the Democrats haven't really had a real primary since 2008. Like Obama
Or
versus
2012
Clinton,
maybe.
Obama versus Clinton would be the real one. Like, but 2016 too, right? Like that's where we have Seth Rich, the DNC, all that
Bernie
stuff that
getting
happens,
edged
right?
out for Hillary,
I guess 2020 maybe you could consider that, like because they actually had like a fleet of candidates. It seemed like Kamala, Pete Buttigieg, and Beto O'Rourke were supposed to be the groomed new Obama like candidates. They're the young, youthful people, but nobody really took hold of them.
Yeah, they got no traction.
Mayor Pete had probably the most attention out of any of them, like seemed to get the most like normal people kind of liking him, but even then it wasn't that much, right? And they snubbed Bernie on that too. There's pretty clear, it looked like pretty clear campaign maneuverings with Elizabeth Warren trying to outclass Bernie Sanders and try to like really undermine his campaign. That seemed to be very clear in the 2020 election.
Yeah.
And then it ended up resulting in Biden because it just seemed like everybody was like, well, he's like the old reliable. He's from the Obama years. And that just seemed to be what the candidates really like. So I guess 2020 was maybe a real primary kind of, right?
Allegedly. But the DNC does have these mechanisms like these super delegates, right? Through which they can basically just put in whatever candidate they want, right?
I mean, that might not be the most fair way to articulate it. I mean, I think from my perspective, that's how it is in practice, right? And it's incredibly undemocratic. I mean, some people have more votes than others. That's fundamentally undemocratic.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and the maneuverings of that is the entire point of the WikiLeaks stuff in 2016. It is email correspondence with Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Hillary Clinton in the attempts of undermining Bernie Sanders' campaign through their like election rigging processes internally inside their primary. That was one of the major things that was released in the Clinton emails, right?
So do you feel like the fact that they have gone about this the way that they have with this very rapid communication from Biden saying, if a medical, first, I'm not going to drop out. No way I'm not going to drop out. Then, if a medical situation arose, I would consider dropping out. Literally the next day, he gets diagnosed with COVID. Mm-hmm. And then within a week, Kamala is effectively the nominee. He's issued this weird resignation letter. Do you think that as a Democratic voter, is that constituency looking at this in a strange way, or are they just used to the Democrat Party not being terribly democratic with their processes anyways?
Well, that's an excellent question. I can't imagine what it's like to be in that party at this point. Like, you see it's so transparently transactional. It's so transparently a coalition being brought together and held together by major moneyed interests.
You're full of shit today.
Well, that seems to be the case, is at least from what I'm seeing online, is, there's all this celebration of, we got the delegates for Kamala. And then normal Democratic voters are like, but we didn't vote for this. Like that seems to be what I'm seeing.
Well,
online.
and the Black Lives Matter very specifically put out a communication hit piece on Kamala about that, saying there was no democracy in this. No one had any input on this. This was all done by party elites. So I think there is there, but just how much noise it's going to make to be able to cut through the. She's what's the phenomenon?
Oh, here, let me pull that.
Jesus.
I'll subject everybody to what's been stuck in my head for the last hour.
All we really need is a feminine phenomenon. A what? A feminine phenomenon. Hit it like rum pom pom pom. Get it hot like Papa John. Make a bitch go on and on. It's a feminine phenomenon.
Now, here's hoping that doesn't get copyrighted.
That just dropped my testosterone by like 50
120 points. I mean, there's so many things can be said about that nice piece there. I think it really illuminates
nice
the resolution with which a certain contingent, a faction, you might say, of the Democratic electorate uses within their political calculus of who they're going to vote for.
Right.
It's much more about star power and appeal, and not about like, well, what has she actually done? And actually, I've seen this going around X as well. People saying, hey, anybody that says now they're going to vote for Kamala, ask them, gender and her race aside, why is it that you're supporting Kamala policy wise?
Mm-hmm.
She really loved it when they really loved it when she imprisoned all those people for marijuana.
Yeah.
Really loved that
For
one.
that time she was put in charge of the Ukraine war and did such a great job with it.
Borders are policy.
Borders are
solid,
killing it.
Solid.
We'll get into that. But so sticking with Biden just for a little bit longer here. The question is, and where does this underlying theory that Joe Biden is not actually there, right? Cognitively, he's not alive. He's like, those things are very rife on the internet right now for lots of reasons. And some of those reasons I think are good. I want to give you a historical example of when this exact same thing happened. Mm-hmm. Woodrow Wilson, in his last year and a half, maybe 2 years, was functionally not there.
He had a stroke.
And the end of his presidency, wrapping up World War I, and much of the very end of his policy regime was actually conducted by his wife. We didn't know this at the time. Obviously, this was not covered. We had similar things with FDR, where a lot of things were covered up by the media about his physical decline.
The American public didn't realize he was in a wheelchair. Like that's kind of an important point, right? Like they were able to hide that type of stuff from the American public.
Well, at that time, it was much easier, obviously, because media was so much more controlled. You didn't have the proliferation of television. A lot of things were, it was just different. Right?
Yes. Well, yes and no. I mean, there was less media sources, but there was also like the Espionage Acts passed in the Woodrow Wilson era.
Sure.
Right. These things that they used to coerce media weren't there, and just your ability to investigate just weren't as good. Right. Those also those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And additionally, I think you're right. There's like a good old boys club sort of thing where you're like, for the good of the country, it's like a more nationalistic angle to that rather than like a petty partisan angle,
right?
Probably
we got to project strength. Right.
Yeah. Especially at the end of World War I, right?
For sure.
So I'm just saying that there are good historical reasons to believe that these sorts of things exist. That if Jill Biden is the actual acting president at this moment, that wouldn't surprise me that much, right? Because it's happened before, and there's no reason it couldn't happen again, other than a normalcy bias question, which I think that's how most people are addressing this from the other angle, is this not normal, so therefore it couldn't possibly be.
Yeah.
Well, and there's also just, we for 4 years have been saying, and everybody that's kind of in tune to politics has been saying, that this is a bit of a weakened and Bernie's presidency, and it's the administration around Biden that is actually in control. So like, people shouldn't be surprised. Oh, Biden's not functioning, and he's like, trapped in a hospital with COVID or whatever he has, right? Really, and he's not all there. Like, we shouldn't be surprised that the operation continues going without him, because we've been saying that for 4 years. Right.
Well, we shouldn't be surprised, and no one that watches or listens to this show would be surprised at all. In fact, most people who are like just have any sort of internet presence wouldn't be surprised, who are aware of this stuff. But I've talked to like some very conventional Democrat voters in the last week who are like legitimately surprised that Biden is dropping out. Like legitimately, like they've just been consuming the mainstream narrative, right? and they didn't have the insight that we have. They haven't watched all the gaffe videos of him saying ruthless things.
Oh, what a loser!
Well, and they'll still kind of preach at you, being like, they know so much more about politics than you. Right? Like,
Well, I
that's the frustrating thing about it.
And to bolster that, like, it's not a conspiracy theory to say that there's like a team around him, and that's actually seen as a virtue. If you look at Lloyd Austin's comments only last week saying, or 2 weeks ago, saying it's not really about Biden, it's about the team around him.
Right. I feel a lot better with so-and-so like working, in his orbit, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that was meant to be like a way to control the narrative, but actually spun the opposite direction, right? Because who's really in charge? It's still an open question. So in order to fight all of this malinformation on the internet, Biden came out with a public address as of 2 days ago. From this recording.
Are you okay? You're going to the...
No, this is the Biden one. This is he makes an absurd foreign policy claim. Was the first one.
Okay, we're skipping over that.
But this did occur after he appeared in that, or didn't appear. But
you're right. I skipped one thing. You're right. You're right,
on
Kyle.
on this Kamala speech. He phoned in, which is just so conventional.
Yeah.
Right. So just to disprove that all the rumors, he phoned in with the speech with Kamala.
It is so good to hear our president's voice. Joe, I know you're still on the call, and we've been talking every day. You guys
That
heard
is
it
such
from
a
Doug's
lie.
voice. We love Joe and Jill. We really do.
I just can't
They
take her
truly are like
seriously.
family to us. And we do. Everybody here does.
There we go. You can pause it there, Kyle.
The way she's like,
I knew you were still there. You're not going anywhere, Joe.
I'm watching you, kid. I'm watching you, kid. I love you.
I'm watching you, kid.
I wish you weren't a liar.
He watches a lot of kids.
And you notice, obviously, on the Rick call,
on the Rick call. Yeah.
Well, and
so what does that mean?
This was another thing that the internet sleuths were going in on, and there was a pretty large belief that was an AI recording or a pre-recording or something to that effect. AI seems to be, which that just shows the current state that we're in right now, where that's actually probably a legitimate question.
Yeah.
Is that actually AI or not? Because this was also undergoing during the time where we didn't know if he was dead or not. Like, it was really unclear, and we're kind of getting mixed reports on this, right? So, but that was kind of the clear up there, as he called her campaign rally and spoke for a few minutes via phone, right?
Now, at this point, like, I see the Kamala signs. At this point, had he dropped out officially?
Yes.
He had.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right,
And
that was his former HQ, wasn't it?
it was like Biden Harris HQ or whatever.
Yeah,
It like
and
shifted
now
very
it's-
quickly.
Now it's Harris HQ.
Now it's Harris HQ. So, I mean, okay, well, whether or not we can trust that was actually him. Like, she did have this gaffe where she almost said like recording or something, right? She stopped,
Which
herself in the middle.
fueled the conspiracy more.
Absolutely, but it just illustrates like the low degree of trust that people have in anything coming out of, well, the media generally, but like this administration as well. Like, can we believe anything that they're saying, because their track record of lying has been pretty well established to this point, and it's just it's not very confidence inspiring. And I don't like, I'm no scientist when it comes to gestures and stuff like that, but looking at her face, the way she's sort of like half grimacing, half smiling, I just
I thought
don't
the same
believe
thing.
that she feels authentic in that moment.
I think it's that, and it doesn't have to be that he's actually an AI this whole time, right? It can really be that there was a comms professional who said, hey, rather than taking up the president's time right now when he's feeling sick, we can just use this technology that has pre-recorded phrases that he's already done to then make this phone call and show all these internet, malinformation spreaders and that they're wrong, and therefore embarrass the right, and therefore set up Kamala.
But strategically
It just
speaking,
fuels it more.
Yeah, exactly. Strategically speaking, okay, what's your calculus? You know what? No one's going to be paying close enough attention to care or know. And it's worth the risk of further undermining trust in our campaign and our administration to just use some technology to save the president's time while he's feeling under the weather. Like, all he needed to do was a TikTok video, like in his pajamas. Hey, he's still here. That's all they needed. They didn't need some sort of fancy, glamorous in front of the camera moment.
The trick is like you can't really produce that with him. Remember the video that he said at the action box?
The battle box.
The battle box, right?
Settle our differences at the battle box.
And they still released it because that's probably the best he can do, right?
So if you're dealing with that kind of, was just filled with gaffes, right?
But at this point, the blindfold is off about his cognitive abilities. They don't need to project that he is this like really well-spoken guy anymore, because we know he's not. We saw it on the debate. They could just show anything.
The question is if they can control the message, and if they don't feel like they can control the message at that point to set Kamala out the best they can, that's when you use pre-recording. right? Because he could go off script. If he's on a real call, he could just be like, "Yeah, I always liked you. You're a good guy." You know, like you're like,
well, and they
don't know. He called his Secretary of Defense a woman, or no, the Secret Service lady a dude.
Well, he also called
in his interview
Kamala Trump. So
He also called Trump Biden.
Yeah. He called introduced Zelensky.
He called Trump Putin. Sorry.
Right, and he introduced Zelensky as President Putin.
Yeah.
So you're right. He is an absolute wild card at this moment. They're probably doing every bit of damage control they possibly can.
Well, and this is the hard thing because there also raises another question here, which is if he can't function enough to run a campaign, how can he function enough to run the presidency?
Great question.
Which we all know he's not running the presidency. Like he has some decision making, but like it's an apparatus around him. But that should be like, I feel like people should be calling for his resignation so that we get Kamala Harris presidency right now, and then she can have incumbency on this election.
Yeah, I think that's a very likely next step.
Yeah, like we might actually see the 25th Amendment come through because the 25th Amendment is the removal of president if they're not fit for office. Right?
All about the greater good.
The greater good. Exactly.
Well, and haven't there been articles of impeachment introduced to get Kamala for not using the 25th Amendment to get Joe Biden out because there's no way she didn't know the truth, the reality of his.
And that's a big thing
decline.
that's a big thing I'm seeing in Democrat circles right now is like, well, Kamala's lied to us about Biden's health this entire time. So is she suitable for it? Right.
Right.
But the Democrats are in a tricky situation because of the money deals, right? Right. Because it's a Biden-Harris money for the donations. Like if they get another candidate, they're having to start over. So it has to be Kamala.
Right. But don't you think those donors would maybe even be more likely to contribute to a candidate who they thought actually really had a shot at beating Trump?
It's a question of time.
Is it a worthwhile investment?
Yeah.
Because political donations for high dollar donors, like it's an investment strategy. Right.
They're buying attention.
You're looking
and
for an
influence.
ROI.
Right.
And you need time to reestablish the relationships, to like make your promises and to say where your red lines are and all those sorts of things just take time.
Yeah.
And in order to catch back up to Trump to be actually competitive, you want to maintain that money as much as you can. That's part of their appeal to keep other people from running against her at an open convention.
I see. That they just wouldn't have time to fundraise to actually run an effective campaign.
Exactly. And
so do you think the Democrats are running this election expecting to lose?
No. I think they legitimately want to win.
I mean, they may want to win, but do you think they think that they have a chance?
I think they do.
They drink a lot of Kool-Aid.
I think how much of their own Kool-Aid there are, especially after the failed assassination attempt. It is so difficult at that point. I mean, if you look at Reagan, and we talked about this a little bit last time, you look at every time there's an assassination attempt on a U.S. president and they survive, it's a huge boost in their overall support.
Right.
I just don't see it. Yeah. So are they realistic about that? There is self-deception, and that's very common in politics, right? I mean, like people self-deceive all the time. That said, these specific people, are themselves the most backstabby, do whatever it takes to win, maintain some control power. We're talking about billions of dollars moving through the center left of the intelligence apparatus of the DNC that is very much interested in maintaining their slush fund opportunities in Ukraine and other places. So I have a hard time imagining they're not going to make the best play they can. And I think they think Kamala could be their best play. Not because she's talented, not because of the other thing, because she fulfills a particular demographic role that they can then run on and then basically continue to cast, Trump as a misogynist and a racist and all these things.
Sure.
I feel like the best game theory would probably be to do a Bob Dole strategy, because when Bob Dole ran, it was very clear that he wasn't going to win, and then the Republicans just started polling a lot of their donations to him, and they hyper focused on Senate and congressional campaigns. So it's like, okay, we're gonna lose the presidency, so let's just make sure that we maintain the House and the Senate so that we maintain some semblance of power, and they just funneled all of their money in there, and then they just let him kind of continue running like a honorable campaign. And that's what I felt like they should have just done with Biden. Just let him continue his honorable campaign and just funnel money into Congress and Senate races.
But that's right. Really where I thought this was. I wasn't surprised when Biden pulled out to this degree. When we discovered, and I think we covered this a couple weeks ago, that he was having deleterious down ballot effects.
Yeah.
So your senators who are running in contentious states.
You just did the Biden thing.
You did the battle box thing.
Did I do it? That's hilarious. Sorry, guys. Late night last night with a lot of cigars.
Maybe
so
it's
I'm still
easier.
recouping.
Maybe it's easier to mix up battle and ballot than we thought.
Yeah, maybe.
It's close.
The battle box.
But he's going to be harming congressional races, Senate races, which are all very, very important.
So if you're the man of system sitting above everything, trying to move things around as a major donor, as like a major faction, representative, if you're the union guy or the environmental guy or whatever, and you have a lot of money to move around, you're looking at this question of whether or not you're going to push Biden out. Your first question is, well, if we lose the presidency, can we maintain the Senate so that you can have a divided government so we can stop the worst thing the Republicans might do? As soon as it looks like you're going to get a sweep of Republicans in the House and Senate, especially to the degree in which you can't get things through filibuster, which is a 70 vote margin, then you're like, we got to get rid of them.
Yeah.
Right. And I think once they saw that, it was like, okay, we really got to pull through on this Kamala promise to make her the presidency. We got to do it now, not a month from now, especially after the assassination attempt fails. Then you can interrupt that media cycle, and then you can pull in someone new and reset your media narrative.
Yeah. So if Kamala is the nominee, and it does seem that she is, who is it that the DNC has selected for their voters to vote for? Who is this person?
Well, Kamala Harris. I mean, and Biden had his little finally did come out eventually and confirm that he is alive.
Actually alive in front of the camera.
With an address. And he said, at least one of the things that he said that I thought was very interesting is he had a lot of rhetoric about, in America, we don't have kings and the people rule. We have democratic processes. Coming from the guy who kept any democratic process from happening in his own primary for the last 8 months.
Yeah.
Right. He then does that and then is shuffling off to his vice president with no voting happening for this woman whatsoever. The last time someone got to vote for Kamala Harris was in 2020. And she failed miserably.
She got like 1% of the primary vote.
Exactly.
When Tulsi Gabbard bodied her.
Yeah.
And I have that clip ready. We'll get to that.
What he did do is, and I wanted to react to this because this might be our last Biden clip we ever have to react to.
It won't be.
No.
Maybe.
You're right.
Especially once he drops out as president.
Well, that will be the last clip.
That's true. That's true. But he said the most, this is so, I can't imagine how offensive this statement is to American servicemen and their families who are under threat across the Middle East, CIA agents who are in Ukraine. We know this from New York Times reporting saying this is what the CIA is doing in Ukraine to help Ukraine. We know there are real people who are Americans who signed up to protect this country who are currently deployed overseas. And then this is what Biden had to say during his address about his foreign policy.
I will keep working to ensure America remains strong, secure, and the leader of the free world. I'm the first president in this century to report to the American people that the United States is not at war anywhere in the world.
What?
We'll keep rallying a coalition of proud nations to stop Putin from taking over Ukraine and doing more damage. We'll keep NATO stronger, and I'll make it more powerful and more united than any time in all of our history. I'll keep doing the same for our allies in the Pacific.
Where's he looking?
Yeah,
he's just not there.
Yeah,
he's not there.
Because the AP report has the camera more head on, so it looks, you get more of the illusion of looking into the camera. I don't understand where they got this particular angle.
It's one of the side cameras because he's obviously not looking at the camera that has the teleprompter on it, which is weird. It's disconcerting.
Yeah. So anyways, that is absolutely ridiculous, right? We have troops in Ukraine, across the Middle East. They just got rocket attacks just like a month ago and in various different places across the Middle East. He is putting tons of people as tripwire forces around the world and then claiming he's the most peaceful president that ever existed. It's absolutely
we
ridiculous.
haven't had a war since World War II. I don't know what you're
because
talking
Congress
about.
wasn't declared.
I don't know what you're talking about, guys. Guys, get with it. Know your history.
You're right.
World War II is the last time we declared war. We haven't been at war for a long time.
So that obviously demonstrates that Joe Biden is just fine and there's nothing wrong, as you can tell.
He looked just fine.
Yeah.
At least you weren't a liar.
All right. So who's replacing this guy?
Kamala. How do you say it? I don't know.
We should just make one up.
Wait, I have a quick question before we move on. Have
She's
we
a
heard from
feminine?
the press secretary since Biden?
Oh, yeah. Where's KJP at?
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't seen her at all.
Yeah, I kind of want her to just get eviscerated. All right, now we can move on.
Yeah, so here's the clip that you pulled, Dave, for Kamala Harris on who she is, and there's an interesting angle for this, I think.
Yeah, this is from a profile back in 2020.
That little girl was me. Years before presidential candidate Kamala Harris made waves at the Democratic debates, she got her first taste of the limelight when she dated talk show host Montel Williams.
Who's the other chick?
That's Montel's daughter.
Okay.
In this Just Unearthed video, they can be seen walking the red carpet at the 8th annual Race to Erase MS Gala in Los Angeles. The year was 2001. Harris was 36 years old. At the time, Harris was an under-the-radar lawyer in San Francisco. She and Montel Williams were accompanied on the red carpet by the TV host's daughter, Ashley. Williams is now confirming the long-forgotten relationship, saying, "Kamala Harris and I briefly dated about 20 years ago when we were both single. So what? I have great respect for Senator Harris." Harris is now married to lawyer Douglas Emhoff. Harris, considered a top-tier presidential contender, has not commented about her short-lived romance with Montel Williams.
So the important thing there isn't just the relationship with Montel Williams, but that's kind of like her introduction to elite circles was through Montel Williams, and as well as other elite Hollywood money. And her kind of rise to fame is through those avenues of the Democratic kind of money base. Hollywood, San Francisco tech, of the left in the progressive variety.
Yeah,
and so
that's
she
the most
came up through
important
that
thing is
system.
the money base. Like,
Yes.
like the relationship is not really what we're concerned
cares.
about here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like it's knowing the power base that she represents. Right.
And if you look at her husband, that she, I actually forget when she married him, but he's a former Hollywood lawyer and one of the big money Hollywood lawyers, not like some obscure guy. He's like well known in Hollywood legal circles.
So he's got a lot of connections as well. Hence why, I mean, she can obviously fundraise from that pool of money is really the consequence to the campaign, right?
That's the way to kind of think about it. Unless if you're doing like power analysis questions of like, okay, interest group power politics, and you're kind of on this real, where do these decisions really get made? In the Democratic circles, and this is true for Republican too, you have different power bases that really matter. And one of the deepest pockets for the Democrats is Hollywood and the Hollywood base. And she's definitely represents that part of the money.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? That's not where Hillary Clinton came from, right? That's not where Barack Obama came from. They came from a different faction in the East Coast.
It's also probably why you shouldn't expect a Governor Newsom vice president pick, because they come from the same base.
True.
Right.
Well, with that question, I mean, do you have any guesses as to who she or the powers that be might select for a VP for her?
My prediction, mark this down. My prediction is it's going to be someone from the Midwest, the South, or the East Coast. It won't be someone else. It won't be Gavin Newsom, because that's a duplication of the same money faction. It'll be someone who has old money connections, either overt or covert, and somebody who can get access to Eastern kind of interest group money politics from Wall Street or from kind of old money out of the East Coast.
I know when all of this was, when all of the questions around Biden dropping out and like the rumor mill was starting of like, hey, he's going to be dropping out on Sunday and all this. I know one of the big things was if there's an open primary, there was scuttlebutt that it was likely going to end up being like for the presidential pick. So this might end up being the VP pick, right? Is North Carolina or Kentucky governor. I know there was scuttlebutt about them entering into this field, which would be again Eastern / South.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
base,
Joe,
right?
you have Joe Manchin who can really carry the blue dog, right? So and that's
who just re-registered as a Democrat. I think, right?
that's the rumor. So the one side of that too. Another angle that you have to consider with Kamala is just how radical her public statements are. We actually have our thing on equity if we want to dive into that next, kind of going out of order a little bit. But those sorts of statements are going to drag her amongst a set of, the blue collar working Democrats who are Trump's new base, right? That's the Reagan Republican type that Trump has been able to re-bring in and capture. That's who J.D. Vance's particular narrative is to bring in and capture. So if they need to inoculate that might make Manchin, who is a classic blue dog Democrat, who pretty much got kicked out of the Democratic Party as he went independent for the reasons that he's just not as on board with a lot of the social progressivism.
Which is an important point. Like when we're talking about the power base of the VP pick, J.D. Vance represents a very important kind of new wing of coming into the Republican tent, which is tech and unions. Right. J.D. Vance captures a lot of that. Right. And that really helps Trump. So when we're thinking about who the VP pick is, like, remember those types of dynamics. And it's not necessarily like what state are they from? It's like, who can they really capture that your main pick can't?
The state is a proxy for what moneyed interest they have actual connections to.
Yeah. So here's the clip which kind of defines a lot of her philosophy, we would say, right?
Yes.
about a goal of saying everybody should end up in the same place. And since we didn't start in the same place, some folks might need more. Equitable distribution. Giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same place. So there's a big difference between equality and equity. Equality suggests often everybody should get the same thing. Well, that often assumes everybody started out in the same place, as opposed to equity, which is everyone should end up in the same place. And if you then understand not everybody started out in the same place, you understand some people need more. So we all end up in the same place.
It's very deep insight.
Right? We are proud of the fact that equity is one of our guiding principles. Proud of the fact that we understand equality is important, but not everybody starts out on the same base. We see that people in our country are having an experience that is not equal. So when we talk about the work we are doing here together, it is recognizing that and being guided by this principle of what we must do in the spirit and in the interest of equity. To put
Exactly. So like those, and it's like the trans stuff is, she was actually confronted on this in 2020 about being one of the most radical senators for the progressive left.
Yeah.
And then she kind of says, well, that's what, what's his name said? That's what Pence said. Right. And then she has this, like, you know, basically it's internet retconned, but as Kyle knows, the internet never forgets.
The internet does not ever forget.
GovTrack. It turned out as a GovTrack.
GovTrack had her as the most liberal senator, or ranked most liberal compared to all senators in 2019. And they have actually since taken this down. But, I mean, the Wayback Machine exists. So that doesn't really matter.
Yep. Long live the internet.
Yep.
So what can be unburdened by what has
We need that clip. We need that clip.
I was just thinking that.
Would you fall out of a coconut tree? Yeah, those sorts of like folksy sayings actually reminds me a lot of Hillary Clinton. She used to do that a lot.
Yeah, she
Interesting.
Yeah, she'd be like, "Oh, back home we got our hot sauce," you know. So, anyways, who is Kamala Harris is the question. All right, so diving into her actual biography. Attorney in San Francisco, becomes AG, becomes senator from California, becomes VP. Right, that's the shorthand of it.
Yeah.
Well, and the AG thing is really important because this is what ultimately I think destroyed any semblance of hope for her campaign during the 2020 election was Tulsi Gabbard on the debate stage just destroying her record as AG. Which I have that clip here. If people remember that.
Do it. It's the most important thing about Kamala.
And then Tulsi was she's completely out of the Democrat Party.
No, she did that because she's a Mossad agent. Not Mossad.
No, not Mossad.
No, sorry.
Assad.
Assad.
She is an Assad toady. She is in the pocket of Syria, all that stuff, right? There was the famous Barry Weiss clip on Joe Rogan where she couldn't define what a toady was, even though she kept calling her an Assad toady over and over again. And Joe's just like, what is that? She's like,
they didn't tell me that.
It's one of the most embarrassing clips I've ever seen from the Joe Rogan Experience. It was awful. Here's Tulsi dismantling her in the 2020 election.
Conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris.
And this is kind of like...
His name is John C.
Tulsi.
Yeah.
Just killing it. Yes.
Dude, that was like her Giuliani moment right there. That was good.
I think this was the moment where Hillary Clinton made her statement about Tulsi being an Assad agent.
Oh, really?
I think it was the day after this, if I got the timeline correct.
Yeah.
Well, it's a degree to which Tulsi was an outsider who was challenging the Democratic establishment, but not doing so with the sort of momentum that Barack Obama had, because he was, kind of just came earlier than he was supposed to. She wasn't supposed to come.
But here's the problem with that too, though, is Tulsi was getting groomed by the Democratic Party to be kind of the next Obama figure because she's woman, diverse, all this stuff. She was the vice chair of the party under Debbie Wasserman Schultz in 2016 when all of the Hillary Clinton email stuff fiasco happened. And that was but she was a Bernie supporter, and that was the problem, right? Yeah. So like, it is important to remember is like, she was somebody that was getting pulled up in here, but then she like actually had beliefs about war. Like everybody was kind of like, like she was actually kind of anti-war, unlike everybody else who's like lip service anti-war, right? And she actually supported a democratic process for their primaries, and everybody was like lip service for supporting democratic process for the primaries. And like all of that leads to her being ousted here. But this was her kind of final nail in the coffin moment on Kamala Harris as she was leaving the party, right?
Yeah. Right. Well, interesting now that Tulsi Gabbard finds herself campaigning with Republican senatorial candidates, like here in Montana.
She's probably going to be in Trump's cabinet. I have to imagine.
That's quite an arc for her to go from from one party to the other, like pretty substantial move. I mean, maybe not ideologically for her, but perhaps ideologically for where the left has gone and sort of, left her sort of hanging in the middle.
Well, I think Tulsi's only real issue that she had was foreign policy. And then when her party left her on that, like everything else was just kind of like going with the party flow of everything. Like she didn't really have a whole lot of big thoughts on the economy. She didn't have a lot of thoughts on the culture issues. She had a lot of thoughts on war issues. Yeah. And so when the party left, she left, and then she started being like, oh my God, my party's crazy. Like it started to be kind of that thing. Yeah. Like I think it's like genuine flip-flopping that she has.
Absolutely.
I think the assessment that people should make about this clip is the degree to which both Kamala Harris is out of step with her party on criminal justice reform, and then quite the other side of that is how much was Tulsi really on board with criminal justice reform, and how much was she kind of just saying this because that was the mainstream of the Democrat Party, and she's exposing a weakness of an opposing candidate.
Quite true. Right. But I mean, that is a really good point that you raised, that Kamala, I mean, if her stance on this hasn't changed, I mean, obviously her record can't change, but that is completely not something that's going to resonate well with urban voters, with minority voters. If they're able to, like, if the Republicans are able to get through the, this initial facade of her race and gender piece that they're going to try to bolster to make her, sort of the DEI pick for the Democrats, like that's not a good underlying piece for them to expose at all.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a big part of the Republican narrative, right? She's the DEI president, that sort of thing. And it's going to, basically cut against once again, the white working class, which feels overlooked by the social engineering of these sorts of programs, ESG, DEI, and things like that.
Honestly, I find it funny that we're just starting to label DEI everything. It's like DEI Secret Service, DEI president, DEI.
And it just means non-meritocratic pick.
Well, yeah.
Right? And that's like...
It's equity.
Oh, yeah. And it's just a matter of time before that gets called racist.
It has been from the beginning of this. Flawless. Like for the last 2 years of people calling things DEI stuff.
We are speaking from a place of white male privilege here, you guys. So we'll just couch all of our comments in that, right? Make sure everyone knows. Yeah, we recognize our white cis
racist
male privilege
podcast here.
So another one that's going to put her out of step with the black vote, especially, is her point of view and her work to jail people who homeschool their kids or basically do any kind of out of school choice. She was proud of it at first, and we're going to dive into her very proud claiming of this prosecution she did.
And I believe a child going without an education is tantamount to a crime. So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Well, this was a little controversial in San Francisco. And frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned because we didn't know at the time whether I was going to have an opponent in my re-election race.
Yeah, and so what that meant, and we have an LA Times article about how she regrets that now deeply, because basically the people that she would then put in prison are like people who couldn't easily afford a high quality educational choice option, and instead we're doing homeschooling or smaller, school options. And yeah, the backpedal there is another great example of where she's trying to rebrand herself, but she was like a very progressive leader on this. Like, you have to send your kids to public school or you're a criminal sort of angle.
I don't imagine that's going to play well with a lot of parents in the middle, right, who experienced firsthand how much public school was failing their kids during COVID when they got to sit behind the screen and see the remote school happening and going, what are they actually learning? I don't want to do this, right? Or they didn't want their kids to have to wear masks, and so they parted ways with the public school system and sought out school choice, which is more popular than ever. I mean, it's growing by leaps and bounds, especially since the COVID era. I can't imagine that's going to play very well for those folks.
Has your kids, has your wife.
From Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris.
They're going to jail.
So we also have we got some of her best one lines though. Before we get into voters, do we want to check out those?
Yeah.
So we have her identifying herself in meetings.
Good afternoon. I want to welcome these leaders for coming in to have this very important discussion about some of the most pressing issues of our time. I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit. And
I like to think she's saying it's a blue suit for my benefit.
Right now, you shut up.
She doesn't want to be ableist, Dave.
Yeah,
she
right.
wants to make sure that even the colorblind folk like yourself can see her.
Oh, blue is such a great color.
I thought it was green. I don't know.
Fashion check, Joe?
Very presidential, unlike Nikki Haley. Moving on.
Oh, savage.
I mean, I'm sorry. Don't wear a bathrobe to a debate. I won't make a comment about it.
He has one thing he's sure about, which is do not do that.
Look, I don't think that's a very high bar to set.
That's just red
Wear
line.
a suit.
Whereas, if I'm casting my vote, I want to make sure that you are not in a bathrobe.
Look, we're not working from home here. You're applying for the highest job in the U.S. government. Okay? You got to put pants on for that.
Speaking of pants, no, what are we doing?
We also want to make sure that everybody knows that she is good with numbers. This is important.
Got it.
We're looking at over 220 million Americans who just in the last several months died. We are in the midst of a public health epidemic that has taken the lives of over 220 million Americans in just the last several months.
That is incredible.
Hey, do you guys remember when
at
66% of the American public died?
Yes, 2/3 of the people I know passed away during COVID.
She's also good with letters.
AI is kind of a fancy name. It just 2 letters.
I just want to actually real quick break and quick pause. I just assassinated our 4th audience member.
Yes,
yeah.
you got him.
I got him. He's dead.
Thank you for that. If you are watching the show,
this one.
you've been seeing our 4th member of the studio audience,
Just floating
this
around.
moth, won't leave us alone. Obviously, a Democratic operative trying to disrupt the show.
I just took him out. Boom.
I also want
Moths aren't real. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
By the way, I also have one more clip of her. I want everybody to know how good she is at foreign policy.
Sick.
Let me just grab this right here.
So the United States shares a very important relationship, which is an alliance with the Republic of North Korea. And it is an alliance that is strong and enduring.
Yes,
Nailed it.
Yes, it is.
North Korea, for those that might not be aware, is not an ally of the United States.
It's not to be confused with the famous South Korea.
Oh, that's the one.
There are 2 Koreas? Are you kidding me right now?
Maybe she's just directionally challenged. Maybe she's a little dyslexic, you know?
There
We
you
just don't
go.
know.
That could be it.
Do you have the clip about her going to the border? Do you know what I'm talking
I
about?
might. We have some border clips, and I don't remember what we have here.
No, they're more serious. Right?
This is the greatest hits.
Well, her
right now.
being challenged on she hasn't been to the border, and she's like, well, I haven't been to Europe, even though got put in charge of the border.
I haven't seen that.
This is actually a good segue to the next part of this, too, is that they're trying to tout, and by they, I mean the Democrats, are trying to tout that she was never named the border czar, and she was never put in charge of the border, right?
It's made some of the best community notes ever in the history of community notes. Yeah. So we have a clip from I think it's the X link, Kyle, of Axios saying Republicans are trying to cast her as the border czar, but she was a role that Harris appointed by Biden as border czar was what they reported back in 2021. And if you go down, You can see the actual Axios clip. The Trump campaign and Republicans have tagged Harris repeatedly with the border czar title, which he never actually had.
And then the community notes is Axios themselves used the word border czar in 2021,
and it gets
referring
worse.
to Kamala Harris.
This specific person who wrote the article about Republicans claiming she's the border czar called her a border czar in other articles. Like it's like Google exists. What are we doing here?
Also, they probably have some form of archive within Axios that they could use.
Yes.
How about Command F and then type border czar and you'll find it.
So we have a video of the border czar question of the media themselves calling her border czar repeatedly.
Quote unquote border czar. Vice President
There you are.
Harris was not a border czar.
Meantime, Vice President and border czar Kamala Harris facing some backlash.
What he said about Harris and immigration was not true. She was never appointed border czar.
And this will be her first visit to the U.S.-Mexico border region since she was appointed as the border czar by President Biden.
Oh my
People
God.
gonna have to counter the misinformation. You already hear folks talking about the border czar. She wasn't the border czar.
President Biden tapped Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, to be the border czar.
Now, she wasn't the border czar. That's what Republicans labeled her.
They were very critical of Kamala Harris, especially in her role as border czar.
Now what she's up against is folks lying about her border record, calling her a border czar.
Kamala Harris, who was appointed as the border czar.
The Biden team didn't declare her the border czar. They wanted her.
You guys
Okay,
get the
to
point.
be clear, for
You
those
guys
that
get
are
the point.
just listening, these are flipping back and forth. The media before Biden drops out is when she's the border czar, but after Biden drops out, she's not the border czar. So just to be clear.
And so what they're going on here is they're probably going on some kind of technicality argument. It's like, hey, did you know that we're not the Russian Federation and we don't have czars? like this isn't
Breaking
the
news.
Russian monarchy. Duh.
Wait, when did that start, though? We just started calling everything a czar.
Reagan.
That came in Reagan?
Reagan appointed somebody as a special something, and it was like an official title that was kind of unprecedented, and they named him unofficially a czar, right?
I recall it becoming more popularized, at least in my political adulthood,
Last
during the
10
Obama
years.
administration. He had czars for everything.
Yeah, so and the only reason I know this is because back then I was like, why are we calling everything czar? So I did the research, and it was Reagan was the first one, and the media gave them that title, and then it became the official word that we now use for basically special appointees within the cabinet or within the executive branch to handle a particular task or project.
I know
or something like
words.
that.
I had the best words.
Well, and here's Biden himself handing her the position.
All right.
Like, we can just...
the nail in the
I
coffin.
asked her, the VP, today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle and the countries that help. We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks stemming the migration to our southern border.
So he just
There it is.
gives her straight up, yeah, she's taking the lead on this.
Yeah.
like what more do we need?
Yeah.
So what year, was that 2020?
Must have
It's
been.
masks.
She was struggling then.
Be 2021, right? Because yeah, he would have been
just looking down and reading. And you notice that he says most qualified, like this person is like the right person for the job. I mean, he's setting her up for this. Now, the question is did they do that to make her like to set her up as the border's a mess. That's Kamala's fault.
Right.
I
To
need
sort
a
of
new VP.
distract from him, distract attention from him.
Exactly. Right. And then additionally, he could, if it got bad enough and they needed to, jettison someone, they could then jettison Kamala and say, well, that was all Kamala's problem with the border. Because the border is still one of the number one issues of contention between the demographics that they're trying to cultivate for their support, which is specifically, once again, white, middle-class, working males.
You couldn't look at the decision to put Kamala in charge of the border while simultaneously having basically this open border policy as anything but really trying to shove that like terrible policy position off on her, right? Like, how do you look at that and go, yeah, this is a good thing. Like, she'll actually have any real authority over this. She'll have any ability to actually change this for the better. Like, there's no chance, right?
Right,
There's no
right.
chance. But that's really come back to bite them in the ass right now.
Right. And that's because this is just, you got to make plays, right? And as you make plays, you have to try to adjust as the reality of the politics change. And this is where it's gone to.
Well, they have the media running cover. Obviously, she was never named the border czar, and that'll be part of the mainstream narrative now.
Well, let me be fair too here. So a lot of those people that are saying she's no longer border czar are Democratic operatives, very
for sure.
specifically, right? And they're saying, and they're just putting out literal misinformation. Now, notice how they treat those operatives versus a right-wing operative. Right-wing operative says, "Oh, Trump did this and this and this." They say, "Wait, we got to make sure we get out proper information." That never happened. Right? They never interrupt these people and say, "Oh, she was actually a border czar and Biden appointed her as this specifically." They never make those qualifying clarifications, and that's the one-way ratcheting of it that people have been noticing for a very long time, going all the way back to Rush Limbaugh, of a different standard of accountability to the media, that they treat Democrats with kid gloves and Republicans like hardened media professionals, right?
Yeah.
So, and what we've seen this week was more of that same kind of new narrative setting. Now, Kamala Harris is the Gen Z meme queen. She's big on TikTok. I don't know if you know this, but everyone on TikTok loves her.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was the story this week.
Tell me more.
After she announced her 2024 bid, Indian aunties took to social media to post in Sanskrit, Kamala equals lotus. In America, Kamala equals POTUS.
Ooh.
And I know there's been like a lot of trending topics of a brat girl summer and all this trendy stuff for Kamala, because she's...
Guys, what is a debate going to be like between Trump and Kamala?
I was looking forward to a Kamala versus JD Vance debate.
Well,
oh
for
my God, this is going to be even better. This is going to... one of my favorite clips, and I don't have it pulled up, is... it's an old Tucker interview with Trump, where Tucker asked Trump, "What do you think of Kamala?" And he's like, "She speaks in rhyme." Tucker's like, "What?" He's like,
Very strange.
She talks like she's like, "The dog will go there, and then the dog will go here."
That's true. So true.
So we have this clip from CNN of Harry Sisson talking as a representative of Gen Z about how popular Kamala is online.
We haven't talked about Harry Sisson yet, but he's become quite the Gen Z influencer on behalf of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, he's popped up in the last 6 months or so.
No, I don't know what you're talking about. He's a neutral, just a regular student.
Just a regular kid.
Well, actually, Act Blue is paying him.
Well,
yes.
yeah.
We have a reference.
I got that story right up here. Good. DNC funded prominent pro-Biden social media influencer.
And you got pictures of him at the White House, getting special treatment by the White House and all that kind of stuff.
And this is a 19-year-old kid. Like, he's a child. So
yes,
don't listen to anything he says. Okay, next.
But they brought him on to talk about how popular she is online on CNN, and this was his comments.
And so your friends who were like, "Who are you? You're out here doing politics. That's awful. What's wrong with you?" What are they saying now?
Yeah, so I've had people I haven't spoken to in a long time, kind of in just friends I also speak to who are not interested in politics, reaching out to me saying, "How do I get involved? How do I help Vice President Kamala Harris beat Donald Trump?" And for me, it's just shocking. I just haven't seen anything like this.
Wow, you're interested in what I do. Okay.
Right.
And so your friends...
Yeah, obviously, all unfalsifiable claims of just like people who are reaching out to him, a completely non-qualifiable and measurable result. When you actually look at any of the social media statistics, she's not doing any better than anyone else is. Like, she's just on because she's on the media, right?
Yeah.
She's in the news.
Yeah.
And then you have people like him who are literally paid by the DNC as brought on as like some kind of like expert into Gen Z.
I need the Steve Buscemi. Hello, fellow kids.
Yes. Well, and his influence is not insignificant, though, too. Like, I just pulled up his Twitter, and he has 1.1 million followers on Twitter, right? And a lot of that is, there is obvious funding and connections that happen with the DNC, and there's probably a lot of astroturfing that are going on that. But to the point of the astroturfing getting to the point where he has a massive following on Twitter, right?
Yes.
Or on TikTok.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Twitter. I mean, he gets a lot more troll action on Twitter, though, at least from the conservative libertarian right.
Yeah, because
like
Twitter's MAGA country.
Oh, for sure.
Well, there's my point is that he does not represent your average, like, just kid who was a streamer who just got into politics, right? He is literally a plant by the DNC to influence social media.
For sure.
That is his entire thing. It's his entire shtick. There's nothing else really to the kid.
Yes.
Well, and that's something to be aware of in a lot of political commentariat. That is a lot of what it is.
Oh, yeah.
Not us here, but...
No, but if you would like to make us a plant...
If anyone wants to drop us a few million buckaroonies, we can be your plant.
Could you imagine?
$300 million.
That'll just about pay our rent.
We're scraping away to try to get the next podcast episode. He's getting $200,000 from the DNC for the 2022 election cycle.
For 22?
for 22.
Wow.
According to reporting.
Yeah, he
How much is he
began
gonna get
working
this year?
for Pallet in October 2022, the same month when the DNC gave Pallet $200,000 for paid media.
So what was he like? How old is he now?
He was he was
he's
in high
19.
school when that happened.
Yeah, he would have been 17
Now
then.
he's a student at NYU.
What the fuck?
So all we got to do, guys, is sell out. See?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, it's,
I love Kamala Harris.
well, it's actually
You just need like a thumbs up.
Imagine during the primary, we go from Joe like being like Nikki Haley's in a bathrobe to like the next episode he's just like, bathrobes are the next big fashion statement for her.
I'm gonna show up in one. I got a great one too.
That's how we get our Northrop Grumman sponsorship. Yeah, that one.
Oh yeah, that
Nikki
one.
Haley. Yeah,
Yep.
yep.
Well, we made the joke that she appears at the next debate just wearing a jet costume. Hello, everyone.
All right.
Just says Boeing on it.
Yep.
Lastly, I want to note, I think an actual better representative where people are at within the Democratic circles who are aware and like not sold out is Bill Maher and his comments about Kamala and where she's at. And I think, Bill Maher has his, virtues and vices. At least one of the things is he can get to these places where he is telling the truth, especially about his own party. And I think this is a very interesting point.
Yeah, he's blinded by his anti-Trump rage, but he's also fairly realistic about the current status of the Democratic Party.
Yes.
That's where he would probably be.
Wait, before we go to this, can we acknowledge the second muff?
Oh, there's at least two or three more.
No. You just been waiting.
Yeah, you just been waiting. Me and Kyle locked eyes, and I was like, I almost pressed
He's like,
it.
there's a second moth in the crowd.
Anytime I can use the now there are two of them, it's never not funny.
The moth was on the water tower the whole time, guys.
All right, sorry.
I like having an audience so you can hear the laughter.
I know, it's
we
nice.
actually know we're funny then.
Yeah, it feels like a sitcom where you have the laugh track in the background.
We're gonna augment that. We're gonna add like 10 or 12 more people.
It's gonna be like 10 Kamala laughs.
Oh no.
And then throw a Hillary Clinton in there for good measure. We came, he saw, he died.
That moth died. That's for sure.
All right, here's Bill Maher.
Harris would be the first woman president, first black woman president, and first Asian president. But I don't vote for who will be the first. I vote for who will win. And for whatever reason, Harris has never been popular. You can count the number of delegates she won in the 2020 primaries on one hand, as long as that hand has no fingers.
Yeah.
In 3 years as vice president, she's been quieter than an electric car. And like an electric car, your MAGA uncle can't explain why she fills him with homicidal rage. She just does. Sometimes life isn't fair. It's not fair that she's not popular. She's intelligent and accomplished, and in fact was put in charge of the border. And look at how... Okay, bad example.
Yeah, he pretty much nails it.
Yeah.
I like the electric car part. That's great.
All right, so on to Trump assassination attempt part 2. Would love to do it.
Actually, that being said about the Trump assassination attempt, it does feel like all of a sudden it's just not a thing anymore. Do you guys feel that?
Like it's like the news has already moved on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think with Biden dropping out, that was maybe all the mystery around maybe he's dead was designed to create something, a story that could rise above the Trump assassination attempt and kind of rob him of that media moment.
Yeah, kind of using it as a foil for the actual strategic goal that you have of capturing the next media cycle so that it doesn't go on forever.
Yes.
The good strategery.
Yeah, but since we've been gone, there's now I just got that song stuck in my head.
There was a congressional hearing.
There was a congressional hearing with Kimberly Cheadle, the Secret Service director, who has since resigned. But I thought we would pull together a few clips of the bipartisan support of getting her out of here.
You're full of shit today.
That is exactly actually because rising star Nancy Mace, all of a sudden she's everywhere. I can't seem to avoid her anywhere. She's just everywhere after this hearing.
Do you want to though? Just fine.
But here is her at the hearing with Kimberly Cheadle.
So you're fully cooperating with this committee. On July 15th, this committee sent you a list of demands of information that we wanted. Has the Secret Service provided this committee a complete list of all law enforcement personnel that were there that day? Have you done that? Have you provided a list to the Oversight Committee? Yes or no?
I will have to get back to you on that.
That is a no. Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th? Yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
No matter how have you provided any and all memos to this committee that we've asked you on July 15th? Have you provided all memorandums within the Secret Service?
Right I would have to get back to you on that.
That is a no. You are being dishonest or lying. You're being dishonest here with this committee. These are important questions that the American people want answers to, and you're just dodging and talking around it in generalities. And we had to subpoena you to be here, and you won't even answer the questions. We have asked you repeatedly to answer our questions. This isn't hard. These are not hard questions. Have you provided us all communications from the Secret Service related to that day and that rally? Have you provided this committee? We've asked for this information on July 15th. Have you provided any of this information that this committee has asked of the Secret Service? Any of it?
I'll have to get back to you.
Have you even?
Yep, which is how these hearings always go. There's an ongoing investigation. We'll have to get back to you.
Just stonewall
every single time.
Yep. Exactly what I would say if I was complicit in a plot to potentially murder the former president.
Yeah, I'll get back to you on that.
Do you feel like we should get into the context of why that matters so much?
Yes.
Okay, so when the executive branches were created, right, there wasn't executive branches, right? There wasn't a bureaucracy before Woodrow Wilson, per se. I mean, there were relatively small ones that were directly empowered by the Constitution. Like the Department of Defense, for example, would be an example. When those were created, the idea was that you would have oversight by Congress to maintain the balance of power. What has slowly happened since then is their ability to actually police the executive branch has been deteriorated by a series of court decisions. Additionally to that, a series of precedents of their ability to get out of any amount of accountability to the judicial branch or to the legislative branch. That erosion has created what we call the imperial presidency, where the presidency can act without really any consequence by Congress because their powers to police are so limited anymore. So that's like the context. Congress has been trying to claw some of these things back, but refuses to do anything systematic because they don't have veto-proof majorities that are willing to actually do anything about this because there's too much money to be made otherwise.
Interesting. So without a veto-proof majority, Congress won't actually ever have any teeth when regulating these federal agencies?
Probably. I mean, yeah. And there has to be something of such cataclysmic problem that they can police from, that they can actually.
This seems like a pretty good one.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but I mean, think about it. We're giving the best sides of this where they actually did it, but the other half of the Democrats were saying, "Hey, did you know that was an AR-15 that they use? I mean, we should probably ban those."
Gun control.
Right.
Yeah, there was a lot of that.
They're trying to flip the narrative.
It was just gun control stuff. Then next year, one of the good ones, surprisingly good from AOC here, was asking reasonable questions about the event itself.
You established earlier that the building upon which the shooter operated from was outside of that established perimeter, correct, for the Butler, Pennsylvania event?
It was outside of our secure perimeter, yes.
Now, that building was, I believe, 500. How far away was that building from the president?
It was approximately 200 yards.
200 yards. Now,
how many feet is that, AOC?
The individual used an AR-15 in order to act out his assassination attempt. An AR-15 has a range of about 400 to 600 yards. My question is, why does the Secret Service perimeter, why is the Secret Service protective perimeter shorter than one of the most popular semi-automatic weapons in the United States?
Semi-automatic. Wow, I'm impressed.
She did it.
Wow.
There are a number of weapons out there with a number of ranges. Again, an advance was completed. The determination of the perimeter, I'm not going to speak to specifics, but there are a number of factors that are taken into account when we determine our perimeter. Some
You're
of it
full
has
of
to do with
shit
terrain,
today.
some of it has to do with building, some of it has to do
Nancy
with
Mace from the Bleachers.
that are available.
But, just reasonable question of, this is one of the most popular guns for shootings in general. Why is the perimeter not that range? Right? Like that seems pretty reasonable.
This is the Pac-Man perimeter that we showed last time, right? Where it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so very cogent question from AOC, critical even. Why is she out of step with the rest of the progressive Democrats on this? Why is she sticking her neck out in this way?
I don't know. I don't know.
What's the logic there? I mean, is she trying to? I mean, maybe she just sees the writing on the wall and she's like, "This is absurd," and I don't want to tie myself to the gun control narrative when there are actually legitimate questions here. I don't want this to come back and bite me in the ass in a couple of years.
AOC is kind of her own entity. Like she makes her compromises with the DNC establishment and everything, but she has quite a bit of star power to the point where she can be kind of Trumpian in a sense within her own party, where she has a lot of her own sway because of her own influence and like social media and her rise. So like she can kind of deviate from the norm a lot of times.
Is AOC having her awakening moment where she realizes she's actually a MAGA Republican?
No, I don't think it's that.
The beginning.
No.
This is the first crack.
But like again, she's like member of the squad. You have that squad that separates themselves from the DNC. Republicans always like to like hate on the squad, but they actually probably have more in common with the squad than they do with the regular DNC like establishment.
Massey seemed to imply she was pretty chill.
Massey gets their votes on a lot of things all the time.
Yeah, when he was on that Tucker interview.
Yeah, which is a great interview. I'll recommend everyone listen to that Tucker interview with Thomas Massey.
TuckerCarlson.com, everybody.
Tucker, if you haven't heard of this guy, Tucker Carlson, he's got a pretty big podcast.
He's an up-and-comer.
Obscure podcast.
He's doing some cool stuff.
He got fired from his job and he's just trying to get by.
I know somebody like that.
Yeah. So we also have
then the last one that I want to play is from Anna Paulina Luna, who is a Republican congresswoman who's also quite feisty, kind of like Nancy Mace.
The term threat and suspicious.
But you guys did have knowledge at 5:59 p.m. according to those group chats, did you not?
Of a suspicious individual.
Okay. Chairman, in my opinion, according to some of the testimony today, I feel that you have perjured yourself in some instances. And so I'm going to ask for a full review of the transcripts by staff. And if you find that to be the case, I do ask that you bring perjury charges against the director. I will say this, it is very frustrating, and I've talked to my colleagues and we've said it to your face, that you have been up here basically stonewalling our ability to get the answers to the American people. And what I will also say is that every single member of Congress does not feel safe with you in charge. You have heard that, and I think that we are all sitting ducks with you in directing the Secret Service currently. But more importantly, it sends a message to our adversaries that we are not protected, and we are one of the strongest countries in the world, so you have essentially made us a less safe country because of it. As a result of that, I'm asking you to formally step down. I share my same opinions as my Democrat colleagues. And I also think that your efforts to bring forward a full investigation and report in 60 days is unacceptable. And as a result of that, I'm going to do everything in my legislative toolkit to ensure that that happens sooner rather than later. And I'm sure that you know that we brought a vote on inherent contempt against Garland for essentially blocking a congressional investigation. And I don't think that you should be any different. So I will say that I am just completely disgusted by your performance today. And I understand that you're probably in a position where you're being told not to testify, which is why we had to subpoena you. I think that goes back to Garland. But again, that is part of the flushing that we need to get out of Washington, and I would be happy to assist in that process. Chairman, I yield the rest of my time.
Yeah, as far as for congressional testimony, it's pretty spicy.
It is spicy.
Yeah.
AOC also made that point about the 60 days. Like, that's just outrageous.
Yeah. And that might actually get to why AOC, answer your question about why is AOC taking this angle, is I think congressmen legitimately think this is a lone shooter who is just a crazy person or a person who's just interested in becoming famous by killing a famous person. And if that's the narrative that they're going on, they feel unsafe, so they want a Secret Service that keeps them safe. Tucker Carlson actually makes this point at the RNC that he thinks that this is one of the ones that we might get to the bottom of, if only because of the interest of the congressmen to protect themselves.
I think he called them all physical cowards. I was
like, oh. Yeah, he said that on Don Jr.'s podcast.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I guess to be fair, yeah, they all have personal security questions now about their details or whatever safety they're going to have or not have as a result of this. So if I were them, I'd be a little nervous for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, okay, so with all that being said, she has resigned, but in the time period since our last podcast, there's been a lot more information that's come out about the shooting and a lot more speculation that just makes it even weirder and a lot more conspiracies around the subject. What is going on? Where are we at currently on this thing?
Frog's gay.
Yes.
It was a gay frog all along. All right, so
he's in the water tower.
The newer information we have, and I'm kind of broken this down into what I was able to confirm through other sources and through Jack Persobic, who was on Tucker Carlson and he also brought a lot of this to light, and it's pretty thorough, systematic,
little known podcast
review.
Tucker Carlson.
Up and comer.
The new information that we have was that he drove a van, which is interesting when it comes to the ladder question and how he got the ladder there and ladder size and all that kind of stuff. He had a bike, that there's a bike on the scene near where his potential point of entry was to the building roof.
Now, getaway vehicle, right? After the crime, he gets on the bike and he pedals away.
And blows up his van.
Blows up the car.
Cause a distraction.
He flew a drone beforehand, which is very strange because as we know that there are technologies that they have to prevent drone flying around these sorts of things for this specific purpose of not being able to scout aerial footage of the area.
When you're in an area near like a presidential candidate / the president,
and
drones will just be disabled.
Yeah, I mean, I have firsthand experience with this. There are all sorts of restricted airspace sites where literally the software inside of a commercially available drone, at least a contemporary one, will not allow you to take off, period. You can't get the vehicle off the ground.
Was that before Trump? Like, that was before, though, right? The drone, I mean.
The timeline is still not clear, but it was hours before the event.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
it was like that morning.
Yeah, I think I remember the FBI director saying it was like about 2 hours before.
Yes.
I think he said specifically like 3:50 to like 4:01.
So it could be in that case that perhaps they hadn't instituted the restricted airspace yet.
Which is
and
interesting
he was still
because
possible to
you'd
fly.
think you'd do it as early as possible, right? For
a whole day
that purpose,
or
right?
a couple days. I mean, yeah absolutely.
He used his father's gun, which is important when it comes to our ATF narrative. But that like using of the father's gun is a particular component of it that was at question.
That was also one of the things too, was one of his Google searches was a previous shooting. I can't remember which shooting it was, where the parents got in trouble for giving their kid a gun.
Right. And he was searching for that.
He searched that particular shooting incident.
Yes. Ostensibly to see what the outcome was, to see if his parents would get in trouble.
That would
for
be
his
the
actions.
assumption, right?
Yeah, that's Crumberly was the shooting. Ethan Crumberly mass shooting, where James and Jennifer Crumberly were found guilty of an involuntary manslaughter in connection with the 2021 Oxford High School shooting in Michigan. And so he was probably searching whether or not his parents would be liable by using his father's gun.
And because apparently his parents just thought he was going out to the range or something like that.
Yeah, right.
Allegedly.
And we know that the dad was a gun guy. He has lots of guns, and he just happened to take one of them.
Crooks tried to get on a shooting team in high school too.
Mm-hmm. And there's some question about whether or not he was eliminated due to like cultural fit or whether or not he wasn't a good shot. That's like been both reported.
Yeah.
New information. We do have video. It isn't clear. Aang claims that it was iron sights that he used, not a scope. A lot of my last time around where I was like, that's an easy shot, was based upon the premise, and I probably should have been more overt about this, about the use of a scope. Once you no longer have that proximity, especially with range lines, right? So you sight in at the very range line, and then you move up, and you have various different range lines below, and you have distance within the scope that you can then judge drop. It makes a big difference in how accurate you are at distance.
Right.
100 yards. She said 200 there?
It's supposed to be like 120 to 130.
Yeah, but she said 200 in that testimony, which was interesting from the Secret Service, and maybe she just misquoted or whatever. I've seen any of those reported.
They're still investigating that.
I've never seen anything reported by a major media beyond 140. Yeah. Even at 140, you're still sitting at a minimal drop, but you can still drop from there. So you want to aim up a little bit.
Yeah.
The question really is at that range, depending upon the bullet grain and depending upon the caliber, we're still sitting at. If it's iron sights, that's a good shot. That's not an easy one, especially under fire, like he probably was.
Yeah.
These are all adding into why is this relevant? We're all adding into the calculus of could he have made this shot? How lucky was it? All those sorts of things. 2 bags are discovered. One is very obviously a rifle bag for carrying a rifle, right? And those are discovered by the bicycle. Bombs are discovered in the vehicle. We covered that last time. We now have the technology they used to create the bombs with the remote detonator, which was a fireworks remote detonator. I didn't even know existed.
Interesting. I didn't either. So does that make the claim that it's less sophisticated than maybe was previously thought? Therefore, he could have more sophisticated.
Yeah, potentially, right? I mean, like, there's if I remember right, remember the Boston bombers some time ago? Those used a cell phone to call into a thing to then square the circuit to then detonate the bombs.
Right.
This would be a radio frequency, right? It isn't clear to me if that makes it more sophisticated or not. I'm not a bomb expert, but I would guess that this suggests that it was homemade in some degree.
Yeah.
The question is to what guidance, right?
Sure. Well, and we don't yet, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't yet have any evidence that the shooter had made any searches about how to construct a bomb with a remote detonator or anything like that. So the origin of the bomb is yet undetermined.
So one of the media coverages this week was the question of whether or not, to what degree was he technically proficient, and that to hide his information from the NSA, the FBI, things like that. And those were that he was a programmer, that he was into taking apart computers and putting them back together, that he had like technical proficiency in that area. And that kind of makes sense with our profile that we have him so far. If he was into programming, could he get access to a Tor account? We don't have any evidence of a Tor account or a Tor browser, but those are standard in lots of browsers nowadays. So
yeah, you can just do that on Brave.
You can't. So the connection to Tor network isn't an indicator alone that he got this information from the dark web or something like that, but it would be the avenue, and we would want to confirm that. Mm-hmm. So, but there's kind of like broad speculation about, okay, would he have the technical proficiency to get this without being found? Potentially, right?
Mm-hmm. There's always the question of, you're just making bombs and your parents being like, what you doing there, kid? There's that question.
Right.
Did they recognize that was happening?
Playing with Legos.
Just with my Lego collection, Mom. Get out of here, Mom.
What are you doing with all these nails? What?
That's a lot of fertilizer, kid. Okay, so as of July 19th, and I missed this one, there's reporting of encrypted accounts. And
bank accounts.
There's been some connection. Well, the Daily Mail just says accounts. I don't know what that means.
Well, what I was looking, but a lot of this is kind of like,
shout out to the studio audience for bringing that to our attention.
A lot of the stuff and this is something that's probably going to require further investigation, but a lot of this seems to be linked to the idea of the Iranian plot, of like there being some potential Iranian connection, which, there becomes kind of like that's a convenient story if it's an Iranian connection, just with everything else that's going on, right? But there is allegedly there might have been foreign bank accounts linked to devices that he's used, and one in Switzerland, one in the Cayman Islands, and one somewhere else. Singapore, yeah, and some crypto transactions, which would not be surprising, right? Like linked to the Cayman Island account in particular. So, and then other people that might have been involved with those accounts, like it's very like, got to dig into it more, but there is a potential connection that exists there.
Right. So it's being tied to an Iranian connection, I think, hastily, right? We don't have any evidence of that. We just have the coincidence of the Iranians saying, hey, we're going to do something back to you, Trump, someday, years ago. And some recent intel agency leaks that say that they're trying to do something
anonymously.
And then the Iranians saying, no, we're not, so like, we don't know anything.
We want Trump dead legally in a court of law. That's what they said.
Right. So the question for Crooks and his 3 overseas encrypted accounts is the sourcing so far. I haven't been able to find anything that confirms it.
But it's one of those things where if that's the case, like this is where, okay, that feeds into the patsy narrative too, right? Of like, this could be somebody being set up by somebody else, and who that somebody else is could be anybody. It doesn't even have to be Iran, like that, because that connection seems dubious at this point. Like it could be that opens the realm of possibilities anywhere. Right.
And what you mean by there is like domestic agencies potentially.
Domestic, foreign, anything. Right. Could be.
Well, and one of those theories that's come
Mafia,
to light that I've seen, and this is obviously unsubstantiated at this point, but one of the theories that's been proposed is that perhaps the shooter was actually told he was working, in concert with the security authorities at the event, because the way he's walking around with the backpack, he's not trying to conceal himself. He's not trying to hide from anyone. People are seeing him. He's climbing on the roof very obviously, and they have him in their sights obviously for a long time. They know he's there. He brings a rangefinder into the event. He leaves. all this stuff suggests potentially that he doesn't feel any sense of concern for being seen, right? Not something that you would think a shooter would, the way a shooter would behave if he was trying to conceal himself and actually get this shot off without getting, apprehended or killed,
But
right?
he does point the gun at the cop, supposedly, who, like...
But that's like in the moment, though. Like, that's right as he's about to
and it's
shoot.
also hearsay. I mean, we
True.
we just have, and again, all of this stuff is just completely like unsubstantiated yet. We only have anecdotal accounts of the fact that a cop had a gun turned on him.
Yeah, but my understanding of that is he took the shots literally seconds after that too. So
Right.
like that is right before he's about to take the shot. You got one cop boosting another cop because they weren't using ladder, like they were just boosting him up onto the thing. And he peeks his head over, and that's when Crooks turns the gun, looks at him. Cop puts his head back down, is like, "Oh shit, there's a guy with a gun." And then Crooks turns and within seconds starts taking the shots off. Right.
But if he thinks that he's with the security apparatus, why would he point the gun at the cop?
Well, and there seems to be miscommunication between all the different entities of the security team.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and that
like
was
the local
one-
police, the Secret Service, everything. Like there's just miscommunication. There's missed meetings. Like everything about it is the level of incompetence just feels to be so highly sophisticated. Like that's the weird thing about this is there seems to be a sophistication to the incompetence.
It's quite true. Well, one of the things David brought to the research this week that came out was that they weren't, in fact, on the same comms channel. The police and the Secret Service were going through some kind of hub, right? Some communications hub. And the Secret Service missed the pre-briefing for the event, or just didn't attend. And there could be many reasons for that. Obviously, we now know that there were a lot of other events going on, and Secret Service was spread relatively thin on this particular day. So there was a potential that maybe they just didn't have the resources to be everywhere all at once, potentially.
Yeah, but you don't have a guy show up. Not a single Secret Service agent shows up to the morning briefing before the event. Right as you got the mainstream press coming because they think the VP is going to be selected. You have an enormous, crowd showing up. You have Middle America. Like, there's so many reasons why
CNN
to do
was
it.
covering this rally, and CNN never covers the rallies.
Well, right.
It's like only Newsmax that covers the rallies. Like,
But we
that's
did-
weird in itself. But that's because of the VP thing.
Right, correct. That would be the explanation for that if there was to be one potentially at this point. But the other piece, and we glossed over this last time, and this is sort of more in my wheelhouse. I came across a thread from a combat photographer talking about the way that photographer was able to capture that iconic bullet trace shot, that image of the bullet whizzing past Trump's head. The settings that you have to have your camera set at to capture that are like the absolute maximum shutter speed, like 1/8,000th of a second, which is vastly higher than you would ever normally shoot photos of anything. And in order to capture that instant in time, he had to be depressing the shutter at the highest possible capture rate, like 30 plus frames per second, in order to catch that brief moment as the bullet passed Trump's head. Now, why would the photographer be holding the shutter down for that exact moment? Was he holding the shutter down for the entire event?
Photographer. Great photographer.
It might have been the second shot, right? He could have been there, and then as he brings his hand up and puts his hand back down, the second bullet goes over, and he starts.
So at that
down.
point, he depresses the shutter.
Possibly.
He might have just instinctually, like, something going down. It could be that, right?
Yeah. They call it spray and pray.
Well, it's the same thing. Like the photographer that got the photo.
No pun intended. Jeez.
No.
The photographer that got the photo of Trump on the ground.
Are we not saying phrasing anymore?
The photographer that got the photo of Trump on the ground, like, he just sprung into action. You can see on the video him jumping over the fence. Like, he just instinctually is like, "This is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
This is going to be a great shot." Right?
Yeah. As a combat photographer, that's kind of his instinct, I guess, would be to not be afraid of gunfire potentially.
Yeah, and he's an award-winning
You're-
photographer too.
You exist
so,
in
like,
it enough. Yeah.
But that's where people are drawing these connections. They're saying, how could this degree of coincidences happen simultaneously? And that's the sophistication question. And then the other side is what's the motive for having a photographer that can capture that? Right. And that's also
Why would he
specious.
have his camera set at 1/8,000th of a second? That's inexplicable for most regular situations, like 90% of regular photographic situations.
Yeah.
Unless he was trying to capture an instant in time.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree, because just this past weekend, like, I was doing PBR bull riding, and I don't normally shoot that fast. So, like, that fast of subjects. So it is, I mean, unless that's just what he always shoots at, just in case. But I mean, it is a little strange.
It's weird.
It's a question mark for sure.
So the other thing we found out was parents, kind of what their story. They're licensed social workers and therapists, right?
Yes,
Yes,
but not psychologists that I could find.
Right. So interesting, right? Got a question there about like this kid's mental health and kind of that sort of thing. Their house is supposedly like a hoarder-like, messy sort of environment, which is interesting because they're therapists and they have obviously some kind of hoarding problem.
Also, voting records show mother is Democrat and father and older sister are libertarians.
Great. Dragging the libertarians into this.
Brennan was right.
That's all we need is more bad press.
Brennan was right. These libertarians, they're terrorists.
They're domestic terrorists. Well, to be fair, they didn't shoot at the president. Who did the kid?
They trained the kid to do it.
So that it obviously was quickly reported, and this is kind of like building out the psychological profile of his political motivations, right? Is the kid was initially reported he's registered as a Republican. We found that within seconds of knowing who he was, because that's public information. But then the question is, why is he a voted Republican because he wants to vote in the Republican primary or because he's actually Republican?
But he's also 20 years old. Like, he probably got registered to vote with his parents, and there could be a whole lot of reasons for why.
He also donated to Act Blue on the day that Biden
like $50
was
or
inaugurated.
something.
Yeah, I think it was 15, but yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So these show a mixed political ideology, a mixed political home, himself having potentially a transformative experience between 2018 and 20. Who knows?
Well, and also
but one thing we know is that he doesn't post online any of his political opinions, which is what you would guess from someone who's highly politically motivated.
He probably has anonymous accounts. He strikes me as somebody that would have like anonymous Reddit accounts, right? Right?
That's fair.
But
we did guess right off the bat that he was a Redditor, just on the physiognomy. It's all alone.
It all makes sense. He's on some furry page. It's,
Wait, is that the kind of porn he was searching for that morning?
we don't know that.
We know he was searching for porn. We don't know what kind though. But that would tell us a lot.
But there's also when did he register to vote? When was his registration?
I don't.
Do we know
2022.
Yeah. So if he registered to vote when he was 18,
yeah,
a lot can change, especially in those specific years of being from 18 to 20. Like that is when a lot of people's that's when a lot of people's political opinions change, because they go to college, they all of a sudden become more liberal, they're rebelling against their parents. Like there could be a whole host of reasons, assuming that he's been registered for 2 years. Part of me thinks that that's not true. I feel like I've heard otherwise, but regardless, political opinions change in that time, right?
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and like you said, it's very possible that he registered as a Republican to try to primary Donald Trump.
That's right.
Right. He picked to vote for Nikki Haley to try to keep him from winning the Pennsylvania primary.
That could be it. But we don't know.
We don't know.
So the searches on his phone and computer of a couple things that are kind of insightful. Potentially, he searched major depressive disorder, which is interesting because his parents are therapists. So would a regular person search for major depressive disorder
versus like, am I depressed or something like that?
Yes, like a normal person. So like there's like a family culture around these sorts of like psychologizing yourself.
Maybe
and
he's
putting
been
yourself into this
diagnosed
place.
with something particular, like.
And part of that narrative is,
aware of.
was he on SSRIs, and a common internet narrative about the potential unintended side effects of SSRIs driving people to
is wanting to shoot the president.
Shoot people.
Or he was MK Ultra.
Yeah, another Google search.
That's another thing that I've never said on here, but that's another thing that's like in that Patsy realm.
David's trying to reel us in.
That's fine. We can get there.
That program existed.
Yeah. Speaking of MK
Ultra,
one of the things he searched for was how far away was Oswald from Kennedy, which is interesting.
Oh.
And that kind of leads towards I'm doing this to get famous. I'm going to take a longer shot than Oswald. That maybe that's kind of what it is. And he was like, I don't know.
How far away was Oswald from Kennedy?
I don't know.
Or maybe
I'm not searching that.
Or maybe he's just trying to figure out the game theory. Is like, okay, if you're going to shoot the president, I should probably learn from one of the best, right?
Wow.
Best in the game. The GOATs.
The GOAT.
He's like, I'm going for MVP here.
Especially if he too was a patsy.
Which, and also there's a lot of MK Ultra connections there as well.
How do we know? We don't know
also,
that he made these
Kennedy
searches.
shut down a lot of the psychological operations that the CIA was doing. He actually actively shut down those things as part of his presidency.
Well, he thought he did. They just went underground.
He actively tried to do that.
I know, especially fighting the CIA and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, let's circle on that in a minute. And then Steam Valve history is another component. We found his Valve account, which is like an online game downloading,
where most
uploading,
people
purchase.
buy computer games.
Yeah. From the company called Valve, the application's called Steam. In that there's public forums, and in one of the public forums he posted that July 13th will be his premiere. So, so that's all right. Kind of all those
watching a video game. He's against Gamergate. He's going for
dragging gamers
don't
into
bring
this.
gamers
dragging
into this.
it's a war on gamers.
So the question that this kind of leads to is a bifurcation of the psychological profile we're using to understand his motive. One being, is he a school shooting like motive, right? Where he's doing this to become famous, to like make his mark on history, et cetera, those kind of ideas. And it's really politically agnostic. Or is it more in the politically motivated assassination? He's a left-wing, progressive, and he wants to make sure that he can't get in so Trump can establish a kingship or a authoritarian dictatorship like he's been told by everybody in the mainstream press and by Democrats for years. Yeah, right. To prevent baby Hitler. I think we kind of leaped to that one conclusion.
You should be considered a hero then. You should be valorized.
Yeah, right.
Well, some people sure are.
If you're the guy that's
valorizing it.
taking out Hitler,
right,
it should be valorized.
And I think people on the left and the right kind of leapt to the he's politically motivated conclusion because you're shooting and that's natural and I think normal. Yeah. That said, we should remain open to the fact that there could very well be that he is motivated simply by the fame and by the opportunity to make his mark on history and to die with a purpose, especially if you're like this kind of incel-like person who society forgets that we kind of push to the very edges of society. You're a white male, so you're a bad person by definition. You're not good with girls. You're not handsome. You're not strong. You're not all these things. So he's going to get pushed to the very edges. And then he's like, well, what's my life purpose? Well, I can do this thing that he doesn't care about the political results, just wants to do it so that he can spit in the face of the universe that shunned him. Does that make sense? Absolutely. That's the school shooter model, and that's I think where a lot of the battle is about is understanding what is actually in the motivation.
But also question. a lot in the school shooter motto too is fueling that resentment towards some sort of political ideology, because that's what most of the school shooter manifestos tend to be. They're like, humans are a plague on the planet, we're super resentful, we're killing Mother Gaia. There ends up becoming this like envirofascism element that comes into it. Like that, like when you actually just read the manifestos of school shooters, there's usually becomes politics involved in it.
Yeah.
There's an anti-natalism that usually comes with it, stuff like that. Usually comes into the school shooter motto.
Yeah, but what's interesting is there's no found manifesto yet. So we're left to speculate and kind of guess.
Got to go through his Steam forums. It's probably. Well, who knows? Maybe that's in Discord.
Yeah. What games is this guy playing? All right. And then one of the other ones that came up on the internet this week, was the so-called mystery man in a gray suit. The theory goes, the story goes, it's not really a theory, it's a story, that there was a man in a gray suit that went around and talked to a lot of the participants, a lot of the audience members, about the pictures they got of the shooter and collected those, who claimed to be with the ATF but showed no credentials. Who are these people and what does it mean is kind of where that's got left at. There's a bunch of different people who are wearing gray suits at the event, so that you can find on different photos. And this is a current kind of narrative about, okay, was this a way to clean up afterwards, to shape narrative, to do what? Or was it just straight up the ATF? There just happened to be an ATF agent nearby who didn't bother to show his credentials, who was trying to identify the shooter. And we have an interesting component to that to kind of authenticate this kind of internet story with mainstream press. CNN put out a report demonstrating how the ATF was the one who actually identified who the shooter was using the serial number of the gun, right? Which would be
within 30 minutes of the shooting.
Yeah, which wouldn't be sufficient to identify the shooter unless you actually have a picture of the shooter's face after he got shot in the face, right? And then match it to like a known person near the actual gun registration person who was actually registered to that gun, who is the shooter's father.
Right. Does anyone find it weird that we're still using 16-year-old photos of crooks for everything?
That is very weird.
Anyone find that weird?
Yeah. This is a school photo from like early high school, it looks like.
He's 16 in that photo.
Yeah.
So
It's weird. Do we have pictures of him?
Well, there's that one that's floating around the internet where he definitely looks feminine, and
that's part of the conspiracy.
With the longer hair? Is that
longer hair one? And I don't know much more about it than that, but yeah, longer hair, and certainly looks more to like in the age range of 20-ish years old in that photo. But I don't know that that's actually been authenticated. That's actually him.
Well, and that's the thing is that there was a guy on Twitter that made a video because he kind of looked like the shooter.
Yeah.
And he made a little bit of a troll video, and a lot of people were using images of him and then it was kind of debunked that that's not him, but like the media was running those images for a period of time.
Yeah.
When it was this guy with a Twitter handle, Jew gazing.
Great.
Wow, I didn't know that. All right,
and then he locked down his account after about 24 hours of it.
Well, that was a bad idea to do that.
That was a bad idea.
I would recommend he got famous for approximately 15 minutes.
He gained a few thousand followers. It wasn't that much.
All right, so the question of the man in the gray suit is the degree to which there's a lot circling around this that we don't have answers for, but there's a very possibility. There is that possibility kind of drifting out there. That's an internet narrative that should be acknowledged. We already went over the Jack Posobiec stuff, and the last one that's also kind of drifting on the internet is this blurry water towers video. And I don't know if we want to bring it up or talk about it, but
I don't have it here.
This is a thing that it got its own news cycle in one day, where there's a video of the top of the water tower and a lot of theories that are circling around about a second shooter.
Which then goes into like, this is where things are reminiscent of the JFK assassination. It was always, for a long time, there was always like, oh, well, was there a shooter in the grassy knoll? Did Oswald act alone? And over time, it seems to be that seems to be more clear that there was some of that going on. But, you know, right now we're still in that speculation phase, and we're probably going to be thinking about that for a long time too, right?
Very possible.
We're going to have that same type of deal going on.
Kyle, I sent you a video. Second link that I sent is a video, and it is very low resolution.
You should just put it in the notes.
I sent it to you directly.
I think it's worth discussing, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's certainly a narrative that's going around online. A lot of people have questions.
The second link?
Second one. A lot of people have questions about it, you know, because David, you brought up, you know, oh, there's a what do you call it, a bell tower on top or something?
A bell top, like there's like a little nub.
Yeah,
on
you
top
can
of the
see the
tower.
nub on top, but it's so yeah. In this video, and you can see it's sort of superimposed with a shot of the crowd as well. You can see, you know, you've got that little top on the water tower, and then you have this black shadowy thing to the right of it, which appears to move a little bit. And David, you made the point, it's low resolution, pixels can move around. Could be, you know, it's questionable as to whether or not that's actually a person or not. Tough to say, really tough to say.
Especially, and I think the best case for this is the fact that as it goes along and the shots start happening, it doesn't appear to be there as much, right? And there's something about that is, I think a good question. So you watch here, everyone's kind of ducking, and you have this moment where it seems like it kind of fades out a little bit.
Kind of moves behind the top of the water tower. Tough to say, but a lot of people have questions about it. A lot of people on the ground were talking about the shots coming from the water tower.
A lot of the eyewitness testimonies that were coming out in the first hours after this, I remember because I was glued to Twitter while this was happening. There was like 3 different eyewitness like interviews with CNN and like big media outlets where they were saying that there was a second shooter. Like they were all kind of saying that. Like at least that's so. From their perspective, it seemed like there was a second shooter, but that could also be like, well, was it the Secret Service agent that they're hearing the firing? That's why there's a different direction. Like it could be a few different things there, but who knows?
Right.
Who knows?
It isn't asking regular people the direction of fire in those situations can be very disorienting.
Yeah, exactly.
So sometimes the echo of an actual shot is what you hear.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So they can actually, there's a lot of question about how reliable that kind of eyewitness testimony is. It has to be in conjunction with material evidence, and that's what you want to look for. And have they investigated the top of the bell tower? I don't know, and that would, I think it's worthy to follow up on.
Probably washed it down, right?
That is one of the questions. Why did the FBI wash down the top of the building
the day after the shooting?
There was a blood stain.
Yep.
Well, the company's like, hey, could you like clean our roof?
Hey, I don't know what happened yesterday, but you left a bit of a mess on the
roof. So that guy could stand up there and hose it down, but you could never shoot her up there. A sniper.
Yeah, too sloped. Too sloped.
There's one extra thing I want to throw in here because I have been seeing this go around the internet as well. There's some allegations that Thomas Matthew Crooks was not actually the shooter. They misidentified for some reason the person that was supposedly the shooter. This other person, Maxwell Yerrick, has been proposed as actually having been the shooter. And this thing I sent you, Kyle, is a little bit graphic.
Yeah, I don't think I'm
nature.
going to show this.
Viewer discretion.
Maybe
advised?
we'll send it to.
It's gonna cause problems with monetization.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe we can send it to Bennett. And we can blur out the middle image because it's this picture of the shooter on the roof
Kyle,
after
put
being
it up,
shot.
I'll blur it.
But it really, you need to compare. Maybe we can put the link in the thing. But
he'll blur it.
The guy on the left is the guy Maxwell Yerrick, who is being proposed as potentially being the person in the image of the shooter after being shot. I mean, obviously, it's hard to tell because the photo of Thomas Crooks is so old that we don't know what he looks like currently as an adult, right? And so it could be either way, but obviously this guy apparently they were in the same gun club, these two individuals. So I don't know. There's some theories that this is not even actually the guy that made the shot.
From the very beginning, and this was going when that guy made the video too, where people were using the wrong photos on things. Like this idea has been there since day one.
Yeah.
That there was somebody there's kind of a mismatch that exists here.
Yeah.
And I even mentioned on the last podcast, we were like, man, the hair just looks so much dark. But some of that could be sunlight and all that stuff, right? But the hair seemed off.
For sure. But I mean, it raises the question of why would they want to misidentify the shooter in this place, right? Yeah. Who is this guy? What's his story? No, I mean, people are looking into it on the internet, but he's not at all part of the mainstream narrative of questioning around what went on.
Yeah. So the case, as far as like the Reuters reporting on the internet theory, is that the FBI had an investigation of 20-year-old Matthew Thomas Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, as a suspect of the attempted assassination of the Republican presidential candidate. And then that one of the posts identifies the shooter as Yerrick, but there doesn't seem to be any material evidence that he was there, according to Reuters.
Sure. Yeah.
And you would need that, right?
Yeah,
in order to make any kind of thing other than that their faces kind of look alike, because when someone's dead, their face looks different, right? That's
for
the
sure.
reality. Yeah.
For sure. Lots of theories.
That and white people all look alike.
Well,
So,
we know that.
yeah,
we know that for a
right.
fact. Because look at the three of us.
We were called brothers in Las Vegas.
We
remember?
were.
Yeah, that
We
guy.
were.
You guys, brothers?
Let's see if you can open your phone with my face, then I'll accept it. My brother can't open my phone with his face.
All right. So, interesting theory. We'll see how it shakes.
Yep, absolutely. Bennett, please get that off the screen.
Oh yeah, here.
Or sorry,
I'll take that.
Kyle. Whoever's in control of things. I don't want to look at that anymore.
So
go yourself.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, what I want to do is kind of circle this out. So we've talked about a lot of the different theories and evidence. Well, obviously, we don't have anything that's smoking gun that kind of eliminates all of the theories. And so what we're left with is pattern recognition between what's happening in front of us right now and what we're engaged in with past examples of mass shootings and political assassinations, right? And so we're using these models of past to apply to the present. And what I want to do is it's easy to start talking to our audience like they are with us on everything, right? We kind of assume this is what we're talking about. It's just the three of us. When I kind of always want to try to drive things towards, okay, talking to regular people about these ideas, right? Because if you haven't steeped yourself in a lot of the things that happen behind the scenes and are all well sourced and we know happened, but are not not reinforced by normalcy bias. It's easy to kind of take this as like, well, they just need something to be more dramatic than it really is. Occam's razor, we should assume that the simplest explanation is the real explanation. When what's
the simple explanation here?
Yeah, the simple explanation is he was a lone gunman who didn't like Trump, right? That's the boiled down version that the masses are going to get. So what I want to do is talk about a couple of the other kind of shooters that had connections with support from domestic intelligence agencies that we know of factually.
That substantiate the potential that there was more to this than just the mainstream narrative of he was a lone gunman who didn't like Trump.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're going to kind of start with the most well-known to the least well-known. We're just going to sketch them out briefly. If you want a deeper dive into these and how they might relate, get in the comments, let us know. Get in the Discord, let us know that this is something that we should investigate further. But I think there's some very interesting connections here. So you had the Buffalo shooter, which was some years ago. Was found that an FBI agent was in the group chat to talk with them about and kind of prompting them and kind of organizing for a potential mass shooting event that the FBI could then interrupt and then bust this person as a domestic terrorist. That didn't happen, right? And the person ended up shooting at the place.
I thought that was Tucker Carlson's fault.
Right. You have the Garland ISIS shooter, which was similar, including an FBI informant text messaging them directly, quote, tear up Texas.
Yeah.
Right.
He also ended up being in the vehicle right behind those shooters and got the footage that was then used to publicize the event.
And was actually pulled over by local PD and was grooming the person.
Groomed him for years, which is another important thing. And this goes into foreign policy stuff. Is a lot of terrorist attacks that happen have this type of underlying. There's some intelligence pushing and egging on for certain terrorist attacks.
Why ever would they do that?
Like within the Islamic terror stuff, especially of the 2000s, right? There was a lot of that was going on. Now that we know, at the time we didn't know, right?
Yeah.
And the best reporting by that is by Reason, who've done a huge exposés on these sorts of entrapment schemes by the FBI to set up people to kind of provoke them from being just a regular person who was Muslim who happened to be very uncomfortable with U.S. foreign policy into doing something horrendous and then interrupting that attack and then say, look at this terrorist that we just found, right? They recruit to then create, and this is a self-licking ice cream cone phenomena. They recruit the person to then go do the thing, even empower them with like assets and resources and knowledge that they otherwise wouldn't have. Thank you, fourth audience members back.
The moth.
to then bust them before they can have it. And sometimes they don't actually do the busting and it actually goes down intentionally or unintentionally. They would all claim, oh, this was unintentional. We were just trying to catch a bad guy. We failed this time.
Which then raises the question, when again, this is where you get into high levels of sophistication of incompetence, right? Are you actually trying to push for these to happen because of narratives, right? Because of some sort of narrative thing that you're trying to push U.S. policy agenda,
right? What is the outcome that they may be trying to advance by supporting these
and that's
terrorists?
where the conspiratorial end kind of starts.
And the straight up one, the most obvious one that anyone can understand is funding. Right, you say, look at all these terrorist attacks that we disrupted. Another one that we've covered here on the podcast several times has been the Whitmore case, which was surrounded by FBI agents who were encouraging this act of domestic terrorism of kidnapping a governor.
Yeah.
Last of that, and this is one of our most clear, because the other ones had very clear motives, is the Vegas shooter, of which we still have no clear motive. We don't have an FBI connection there. We could have international espionage implications based upon other people who happened to be in Vegas at that time and reporting around those people. But we still really don't know what was going on there or why this guy decided to shoot into a country music festival crowd and with no clear motive whatsoever.
Also, wasn't there... Was this on the Jack Posobiec Tucker interview? They were talking about the attempted assassination attempt on FDR and way back in the day. And it was like some high up official in Chicago. Was it the Chicago mayor? Someone got shot in the background, like someone important. And the belief is that the target wasn't actually FDR.
It was the mayor.
It was a mob hit on the mayor.
Wow. Interesting.
Right? I can't remember. Some podcast was just recently talking about that, and I went and looked into it, and it was kind of interesting.
Well, and one of the variables that are underweight, and you kind of said this earlier, Kyle, is that there's a degree to which organized crime is a variable in these sorts of things. Domestic organized crime has things and does things of this sort, and you can't just write them off as not a thing because we don't make mob movies anymore of that sort. But they do exist, and they are real.
The American public is not ready to understand how much of a factor organized crime plays in our general economics of the world. and that's not something you hear in economic textbooks. Your economic heroes don't talk about that, but it is a major factor in how the world works, is organized crime at varying degrees of levels, right? From all the way to who's taking control over major institutions of power down to like your local mafia. like it's a big factor that exists, right? It's organized crime.
Yeah.
So that was the shot. The chaser today is going over some fake news of Elon, Trump, and fake news. So last week, we had a news cycle that came out after Elon's initial endorsement of Trump that he was going to be supporting Trump at $45 million per month as a pledge.
We said it on the podcast. Yeah, we said it on the podcast.
A bunch of fake news spreaders.
It came out of the Wall Street Journal, I believe.
Yeah, she was a liar.
Here's the thing, though. Unlike Chris Cuomo, we're willing to admit when we're wrong and bring that to light.
It was one of, like, it's actually in hindsight, you're like, man, that's a lot of money.
Well, it would amount to like $180 million across 4 months until the election, right?
It's crazy.
It's a ton of money.
Elon could support us like that.
Yeah, and for a fraction of the cost, I might add.
Elon, if you want to become a YouTube member, you'll get a free merch once a year.
It's a very soft t-shirt. David's wearing it right now.
Woo! Well, we're going to have special merch for our members.
Yeah,
like special exclusive merch.
Absolutely.
So, and what happened kind of later this week was it came out that this was completely false. And of course, rather than doing what we just did, which is, hey, we were wrong, we read someone and then believed them, they said, they come out with a new report from Fortune magazine. Elon Musk backs down from $45 million a month pledge to Trump, says he doesn't, quote, subscribe to the cult of personality, end quote. This is a great example of narrative control by the media and what we're kind of trying to make sure that we regularly expose people to, that there's an effort to never say you were wrong, to realize, to treat the information environment as if you had command over something, had control over what you don't control, which is that you don't have an infinite amount of attention or capability or research or whatever. And so given that, how best to orientate to that reality of the internet is not to, we are the authority and listen to us, pleb. It's, we're all trying to sort this out together.
Right.
You know, it's kind of funny. YouTube Shorts recently have just been sending me old Nixon interviews, just like clips of old Nixon interviews all the time. And it was just, this whole thing was reminding me of, you used the term imperial presidency. And there was a clip that I saw where he was asked about, like, you know, the imperial presidency, and Nixon made the point, and this is, you know, we're talking back, Nixon was what, 80s, right? No, 70s. Yeah, 70s. Where he's talking all the way back then. It was like, you know, everybody tries to make these claims about the imperial presidency, but I think what we need to be talking about is the imperial media, who can just say whatever they want and just lie, and there's no accountability for it. You know, but like this is an example of that, right?
Yeah. Very good point.
This is a clear example of, like, they just control and craft the narrative however it goes, and then we just move on, and it was like, oh no, yeah, Elon's backing out. It was like, no, it just was never happening. Yeah, right.
Right. So Elon gets on with JB Peterson, and we can talk about more of that in the skiff.
We are going to talk about that.
And he says, no, that wasn't true. That I never committed to that. I'm not doing that. In fact, I have these kind of other arrangements that I'm pursuing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we say this all the time, but the media is obviously doing this to try to save face, to try to maintain credibility, seemingly, or maybe they're just trying to lie. I'm not sure. But what it's really actually doing,
you're full of shit today.
Yeah, if their motive is to try to preserve their, you know, the trust in their institutions, they're actively eroding that because the internet exists. They're operating in this realm, like they think that people can't seek this information out for themselves, or they don't expect that they will. But the encouraging thing for me is that most people are now. I mean, and right back to, you know, X getting its highest traffic, daily traffic ever on the day of the assassination attempt. People were not going to the mainstream media for their news. They were going to the internet because they know that's where they can actually get more sources, get more ideas, and sort out the truth for themselves instead of just taking what's fed to them.
Not through a filter, right? And like each attempt, and not saying that filtering's bad, it's just saying that your filter, whether or not you trust it, whether or not they're authentic, whether or not they're really lying to you or not, on behalf of an interest that isn't your interest, that's the question.
Yeah. And the track record now is that they are lying to you.
Right.
So yeah, people, I think trust in media is obviously, I mean, the ratings are the perfect metric for that, and they're through the floor, right? And you see it with guys like Tucker Carlson who go independent and get greater viewership than they ever got on cable news. I mean, it's a shifting paradigm, and it's a good thing for the pursuit of truth in the world, I think.
Absolutely.
I have one thing for us to close this out on.
Another chaser?
Just to totally get
chaser.
it out?
Yeah, okay.
Because I've had a lot of people ask me about this, and it was Trump did a YouTube video with famous golfer Bryson DeChambeau. Is that how you say his last name?
That is correct.
Like, I only ever read it.
Well
done. And it was a great, like, hour-long, it was like peak YouTube content. It was so like wholesome and just two dudes golfing. Right? Where
just what we need right now.
And I had a bunch of people messaging me because they know I like to golf. You like to golf, Joe, too. And Bryson does this challenge where he brings on, like, famous people and also, like, other professional golfers, and they try to score under 50 on 18 holes from the red tees, which is like the forward tees in golf, right? And
say it. No, you. I see you smirking.
It's the ladies' tees.
It's the forward tees. Because anyone can golf from. Sometimes it's good to practice from the forward tees.
Look, I totally.
I just saw Joe's
but typically it's the ladies' tees. Yeah, that's typically. But so here's just a little short from that, and I thought it was a fun little short. And it's also one of these things where Trump should do more of these.
Yeah,
because it humanizes him a lot.
Yeah.
It actually reminds me of pre-politics Trump, where Trump was very well liked, like just as a figure in America, right? Until politics came around. And this was one of these things where they're just going around on the golf course. Trump's talking about his maple trees over there. He's talking about this bridge that they preserved. No politics is part of any of it. He makes like one comment of like, do you think Biden can do that? Like with a good shot.
Yeah.
But here is Trump in just a quick little short.
210? 210. It's a little into the wind, maybe? Yeah.
Good shot.
Good shot.
Oh, yeah.
Onto the green.
Get up there. Get up. Yes. Yes.
Did you just hit
Way
it?
to go. Do I even have to hit?
He's like 4 feet from the hole.
Wow.
Oh, be good.
Man, is that good?
Be good.
Wow.
Okay. I'll take that all day. You've hit it inside me a couple times today, actually.
This could be, but
I think you
Are we
might.
not saying phrasing anymore?
It was more
Are we not saying phrasing anymore?
I think you might be
a
closer.
golf
Can you believe that?
Who's closer?
Who's inside who?
I think the president hit it inside me. This is one of the greatest shots I've seen in a long time. Drove it to 4 feet.
Homoerotic.
I'm gonna come.
Here you go. Nice. He just walks off like a boss. That's the first eagle that I didn't contribute to whatsoever.
How far is that?
210.
So Trump just nailed an eagle on that challenge, and he also got a solo birdie. So like, because they're playing best ball, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things where it just reminds me of at the debate, you have Biden and Trump going at each other, and there's like, I can beat you at golf. No, I can beat you at golf. And I always thought Trump was kind of exaggerating about his golf skills, but after watching the entire episode for an hour, I was like, dang, Trump's actually pretty good at golf.
Yeah.
Didn't Bryson put a tweet or something about that too? Like, I thought, like he says, I thought he was exaggerating.
Well, that was the thing in this challenge. So he's only ever with another like good golfer gotten 50 before. They've never actually broken under 50. Trump and him got 50 on this. So he's tied for the best on the challenge as a whole.
Wild.
And you're just like, that's a 78-year-old dude.
Well, he does own golf
Doing pretty
courses,
good.
so you'd imagine.
And that is
plays
his
a
golf
lot.
course too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was a fun video.
That's
I had
fun
a lot
video.
of I had a lot of people asking me about the video because they all saw it and it popped up on their YouTube feed, and I was just like, yeah, that's
Makes
nice
me want to
little
go
feel-good.
golfing. You know?
Yeah.
Like, get out there.
Yeah, let's
Hit
do
the
it.
links. You guys want to go?
Yeah.
Human reaction from the red tees?
I'll day drink.
We should do a podcast from the course.
That's a great idea.
Just going around on
Sure.
That's a great idea. Look out for that coming to YouTube.
David's
You can
like,
see how
yes,
bad I am.
can swing the club. I have done Top Golf with David before. It was a spectacle.
We'll get him a lesson or two.
My
Get him
shoulder's
brushed
better
up.
now. I can do it. Let's do it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, guys, for being here. David Rand, Kyle Mack, Bennett. I'd like to thank our Moth friends for joining us on the set. And I'd like to thank my family for joining us in studio as our in-house laugh track.
Yeah.
You guys are great. We appreciate you,
That was
your
a nice
support.
golf clap to end.
Yeah,
it.
That was a great golf clap. We'll have to bring you on the course when we do our episode from there. And of course, thank you for watching at home. Thanks to our members for supporting the show, and we will see you in the skiff right after this. Thanks for tuning in to Human Reaction. Please be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and give us a review on your podcast platform of choice. And if you want to become a member and support the show financially, check out humanreactionpod.com. And remember,
We came, he saw, he died.